I've never liked crowded stores. Even before the divorce, before the near robbery in that gas station parking lot, I was the type of man who kept his eyes on exits and checked my back when I walked through automatic doors. Anxiety sticks to you like that. It doesn't ask for permission, it just hangs on, whispering that danger is closer than it looks. But Liam had been asking me for weeks. "Dad, when can we go get the new robotics kit? The one with the gears that move the arms?" He'd show me YouTube videos of kids unboxing the kits, his wide eyes filled with wonder. He's only 8, and after the divorce I knew he needed time with me more than ever. His mom tried, but I could see the cracks. Her patience thinning, her sighs when he talked too much about robots and action figures. So I promised him a trip. A small adventure, I called it. Walmart on a Saturday afternoon. Nothing too fancy, but for him, it was like Disneyland. I told myself I could swallow my nerves for one day just to see him smile. The cold December air bit at our cheeks as we pulled into the crowded lot. Cars were packed shoulder to shoulder, families carrying oversized bags, people honking at each other like the holiday spirit had expired a week early. I gripped the wheel tighter than I should have. My chest tightened the way it always did when I thought of the mugging. I'd been 29 then, walking out with a six-pack and some chips when a kid, barely 18, pulled a knife on me. I'd handed over everything, and still he'd pressed that blade so close I could feel it against my ribs. He didn't stab me, but the memory stuck like a scar. "Dad?" Liam's voice pulled me out of it. He was hugging his little backpack, the one with his old toy robot stuffed inside. "You okay?" "Yeah, buddy," I forced a smile, just thinking about what snacks we should grab. Inside, the warmth of Walmart hit us, fluorescent lights humming overhead, holiday decorations dangling, and the tinny sound of Jingle Bell Rock echoing from every aisle. I tried to ignore the noise, to focus on my son's small hand gripping mine. His excitement was contagious. Still, I scanned the crowd automatically. Too many people. Too many voices. Somewhere in my gut, the unease stirred. And that was before I saw him. The man standing near the knives section, muttering under his breath, his head jerking in strange rhythms like he was chasing thoughts only he could hear. I didn't know his name then. Didn't know about his release from the hospital or the warnings ignored. All I saw was a stranger pacing, eyes darting toward kids, toward families, toward us. And already, something inside me whispered, "Trouble." We made our way to the toy section, Liam tugging me like an eager guide. "Come on, Dad, it's down this way." His voice was high with excitement, but I couldn't shake my eyes from the man I'd seen. He had drifted closer. No cart, no basket, just empty hands curling and uncurling like he was testing his grip. I tried to focus on Liam kneeling beside him as he pulled boxes off shelves. "Look, this one has a motor, and this one has tracks." "That's pretty cool," I said, though my voice sounded distant even to myself. He frowned. "You're not looking." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "I am, buddy. I promise." But over his shoulder, I caught sight of the man again. He'd stopped pacing. He was watching us, lips moving fast, muttering about something I couldn't hear. A family walked past, a little girl in a puffy coat holding a Barbie. The man's eyes followed her, then snapped back to the shelves of knives only a few feet away. My heart rate picked up. Old instincts clawed their way back. I whispered to Liam, "Stay close to me, okay?" "Why?" he asked. "Just do it." I glanced at the nearest security camera, half hoping someone in a booth was seeing this. But knowing stores the way I do, those cameras were more for show than safety. Liam tugged on my sleeve again, his voice dropping. "Dad, why is that man looking at us?" My blood went cold. He saw it too. It wasn't just my nerves. Before I could answer, the man moved. Quick, sudden, his hand shot out, snatching a kitchen knife from the shelf. And in that instant, the world split in two. 1 second it was Christmas music and bright lights. And the next, it was chaos. "Dad!" Liam screamed as the man lunged. I didn't think. I shoved Liam down and forward. Run! My body reacted before my brain did. I barreled into the man, the knife flashing under the lights. We hit the floor hard, boxes of toys toppling around us, the edge of the blade slicing against my arm. Shoppers screamed, scattering like birds. My only thought? Keep him down, keep him away from Liam. The man was shouting, spittle flying. They need cleansing. The store is poison. You're all poison. His strength was wild, unhinged, his eyes glassy with fury. Somewhere far down the aisle I heard my son's cries, high-pitched and terrified. And that sound gave me strength. I wrapped both arms around the attacker, holding him tight to the floor as his knife scraped against the tiles. My voice was raw, screaming for help. And for the first time since the mugging years ago, I wasn't paralyzed by fear. I was fueled by it. The weight of him pressed into me, hot and frantic. He bucked his body like a wild animal, teeth bared, sweat pouring down his face. The knife in his hand clattered against the tile once, twice, but he kept trying to grab it back. "Stay down!" I roared, my voice breaking. My arm stung where he'd sliced me, warm blood seeping through my sleeve. But pain didn't matter. Not with Liam crying, not with this man screaming about cleansing the store. "Get off me. They'll thank me later. The children." His words broke into a howl as he twisted beneath me. Shoppers were fleeing, carts abandoned, toys scattered across the floor like battlefield debris. Somewhere a woman screamed for security. Someone else yelled for the police. But in that moment, it was just me and him. I slammed his wrist against the ground once, twice, until the knife slid out of reach under the shelves. He shrieked like a wounded animal, twisting his body with unnatural strength. A glimpse to my left. Liam was crouched at the end of the aisle, tears streaking down his face, frozen between running and coming back. "Stay back," I shouted, locking eyes with him. "Don't move, Liam. Stay there." He sobbed, hugging his little backpack tight. Finally, 2 security guards appeared, hesitant at first, then rushing forward when they saw the knife. "Get his arms," one shouted. Together we wrestled him down, my body shaking with adrenaline. His breath came in hot bursts against my cheek as he cursed us, spat at us, promised more to come. And then, like a dam breaking, sirens wailed outside. Police stormed in, officers barking orders, people pointing toward our aisle. Within minutes they had him cuffed, dragged up off the floor, still screaming about cleansing. Blood stained his shirt, my arm, the tiles where we'd fought. I slumped against the shelf, trembling, vision blurring. Liam bolted to me, throwing his arms around my waist. His sobs broke something inside me. "It's okay, buddy. It's over," I whispered. Though even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Because the look in the attacker's eyes as they dragged him away wasn't defeated. It was certain. Like this was only the beginning. The days after blurred together in a haze of questions, police reports, and hospital visits. My arm had needed stitches, though the doctor said I'd been lucky. Liam didn't feel lucky. He woke up 3 nights in a row screaming, "The monster in the toys." I'd rush into his room, heart pounding, hold him until his shaking stopped. His little robot toy sat abandoned on his desk, untouched. Every time we passed a store, he squeezed my hand tighter. Once he begged me not to go inside at all. The police called me in for follow-ups. Marcus Vale, they told me, 27, recently discharged from a psychiatric hospital, supposed to be under supervision but somehow slipped through the cracks. They explained his delusions about corporations poisoning kids, about stores being evil temples. It didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made the world seem thinner, more fragile. Reporters tried to reach me too. I shut them down. I wasn't interested in being the headline, "Local dad saves son in Walmart attack." Because at night, when the lights were out and the house was quiet, I replayed it all. The lunge, the knife, the wild eyes. And each time my stomach turned with the same question. What if I hadn't been fast enough? 3 months later, I sat alone at the kitchen table, paperwork spread out, when the call came. It was a detective I barely remembered. His voice was grave. "Mr. Cole, you should know. Vale had more planned. We found notes in his apartment, maps of local stores, especially ones with toy aisles. Walmart was just first on the list. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My hand gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. He said he chose Walmart because of the children, the detective added quietly. I thanked him numbly, hung up and sat there in silence. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, it all felt too loud. Liam shuffled in, sleepy-eyed, his toy robot clutched under one arm. "Dad?" I forced a smile, pulling him into my lap. "Hey, buddy." He yawned, laying his head against my chest. "I don't like stores anymore." "Me neither," I admitted. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't wrong to be afraid. The world had cracks big enough for evil to slip through, and all we could do was hold on tighter, watch closer, never assume safety where it didn't exist. Evil doesn't always hide in dark alleys or distant shadows. Sometimes it stands beside you in a brightly lit aisle dressed like any other shopper. Fear doesn't mean weakness, it means awareness. And while we can't protect our children from every danger, we can prepare them, stand with them, and remind them that vigilance, compassion, and courage matter more than blind trust. The world is fragile, but so are we. That's why we must hold each other close, especially in the places we think are safe. People like to think fires start with a spark, a lighter, a match, an accident in a kitchen. But I've come to believe fires begin long before the flames ever catch. Inside someone's chest, when bitterness smolders and resentment eats away at the air. That's how it started for me. Not in the stockroom, not with the chemicals, but with something much smaller. Being forgotten. For 5 years, I gave everything I had to Walmart. Nights spent stacking pallets, checking stock, cleaning up messes from customers who never looked at us twice. 5 years of loyalty. And what did I get? Nothing. No recognition, no appreciation. 4 times in a row, I was left off Employee of the Month. 4 times. I was told, "We value you, Oliver, but maybe next time." And next time never came. I told myself it didn't matter. But then the breakup came. My girlfriend of 2 years walked out, saying I was too distant, too tired, too hollow. I didn't fight her. Maybe because I didn't care, or maybe because I cared too much. Nights got longer, darker, and somewhere between sleepless shifts and empty weekends, I started to hear a voice in the back of my head. They've forgotten you. They think you're nothing. Make them see. I remember Karen Whitfield, the new manager. Strict, ambitious, always reminding us that corporate had expectations. She wasn't cruel, not exactly, but she had this way of looking past you like you were just another cog. She pulled me aside one night about a misplaced pallet. I tried to explain, but she cut me off. "Oliver, this store doesn't run on excuses." That's when the fire in my chest grew hotter. On September 12, 2024, I came to the store not as an employee, but as someone already halfway gone. I'd been fired a week earlier after an argument. Me shouting, her writing me up, the district manager nodding along. They told me I wasn't a fit for the environment. That evening I walked into Walmart like a shadow. Nobody noticed me at first. Shoppers moved around with carts full of groceries, kids tugging on their parents for toys, students grabbing snacks. Ordinary people, ordinary lives. But I wasn't ordinary anymore. I wandered the aisles with a box cutter in my pocket and a storm in my head. Every step, I told myself, they'll remember me. They'll all remember me. The store felt different that night. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, flickering in the back aisles. The cafe up front had burned toast, the bitter smell drifting through the air, mixing with cleaning supplies and cheap plastic packaging. I paced near the fire exits in the stockroom. I'd been there so many nights before, breaking down boxes, sweating through long hours, invisible. Now I wasn't invisible. I was planning. My palms itched as I stacked pallets near the emergency doors. Nobody paid attention. They thought I was just another worker finishing up. A couple of employees nodded at me without question. It almost made me laugh. Karen walked by at one point, clipboard in hand. She frowned. "Oliver, I thought you weren't scheduled." I froze for a second, my throat tightening. "Just clearing a few things up." She gave me that manager look, suspicion mixed with exhaustion. But then she sighed, shook her head and moved on. That's what people always did with me. Move on, forget. Back in the stockroom, I pulled out the lighter I'd brought. My hands shook, not from fear but from anticipation. I whispered to myself, "They think they can forget me." The flame caught quick on cardboard, then spread to a box of rags. The smell turned sharp, acrid. My heart pounded as the smoke began to curl upward, thick and dark. And then, screams. The fire alarm shrieked overhead. Lights flashed red. Shoppers cried out in panic, carts clattering against shelves as people tried to find exits. But the exits I had stacked? Blocked. Families crowded near the doors, coughing in the rising smoke. Karen's voice cut through. "Stay calm. Move to the front." But calm was impossible. The fire had grown fast, licking up cleaning supplies, hissing as chemicals exploded in sparks. I stood near the stockroom door, watching it spread, watching panic bloom. My chest felt light, almost euphoric. "Now they see me," I muttered. The fire spread faster than anyone could have guessed. Aisle 9, where the cleaning products were stocked, turned into a wall of flames. The heat slammed against my face, sweat running down my neck. People coughed, stumbled, dragging children and shouting each other's names. A mother screamed, clutching her toddler to her chest. A group of students tried to push a pallet out of the way, coughing violently. Elderly shoppers leaned on their carts, their eyes wide with terror. And in the middle of it all, Karen. She was moving from aisle to aisle, her voice hoarse but steady. "This way, stay low, cover your mouths." I watched her, part of me angry she was still in control, another part strangely admiring her resolve. She wasn't abandoning them, she was trying to save them, even when I'd set it all ablaze. Someone grabbed my arm, a young man, maybe 20. "Help us move this." He pointed to the blocked exit. For a moment, instinct fought inside me. I could help. I could shift the pallets. But then the fire inside me whispered, "No, they'll forget again. Make them pay." I yanked my arm free, stepping back into the shadows. He stared at me like I was insane, then turned back to the others. The fire roared louder, the shelves groaning before one crashed down with a deafening clang. Shoppers shrieked as smoke poured thicker, choking the air. Through it all, I stood calm, whispering, "If I go, they all go." By the time the firefighters arrived, the store was an inferno. Sirens wailed outside, the glow of red and blue lights flashing through the haze. Smoke billowed out the front doors as people stumbled into the parking lot, coughing, some collapsing. Karen led the last group out, her face streaked with soot. She looked back once, her eyes locking with mine. I don't know what she saw, anger, madness, maybe both. I retreated into the storeroom, locking the door behind me. The smoke clawed at my lungs, the heat pressing down. My lighter was still in my hand. My shirt caught flame at the edge, searing my skin. Pain shot through me, but I didn't scream. Not yet. I sat down against the wall, pulling a crumpled receipt from my pocket. The pen in my hand shook as I scrawled the words, "If I go, they all go." I dropped the note, leaned back, and let the flames climb higher. But fate, or maybe punishment, had other plans. Firefighters broke through, dragged me out. My skin blistered, the world spinning in flashes of light and heat. I didn't die. Not yet. They tell me I'll carry these burns forever. My arms, my chest, my face. They're maps of what I tried to do. Every day I wake up in a hospital bed, machines beeping, nurses avoiding my eyes. The police come often. They call me criminal, arsonist, monster. Maybe they're right. But in my mind, I wasn't trying to be a monster. I was trying to be remembered. Karen survived. So did most of the shoppers. A few were hospitalized, but they lived. That should give me relief. But it doesn't. The detectives showed me photos of the store afterward. Blackened aisles, melted shelves, toys turned to ash. A place I once worked for 5 years, reduced to ruins in one night. My legacy, if you could call it that. People whisper about me now. Families won't shop there anymore. Kids wake up from nightmares. Employees work under new security. They'll never forget Oliver Grant. I can't escape the truth. The only thing I gave them to remember me by was fear. Bitterness left to fester becomes fuel, and anger left unchecked becomes fire. Recognition, love, purpose, when those are lost, people can spiral into darkness. But destruction never earns respect. It only leaves scars, on others and on yourself. True worth doesn't come from forcing others to remember your pain. It comes from building something worth remembering in the first place. I've always been the type of mother people roll their eyes at. The one who double-checks the locks twice at night, who still insists her 9-year-old hold her hand in parking lots, who sits at playground benches with her heart in her throat every time a stranger comes near. I never apologized for it. I couldn't. Not after the playground incident. Sophie was 4 then, barely old enough to remember it. We had gone to the neighborhood park on a spring afternoon. I was answering a text from a client, just 10 seconds no more, when I looked up and she was gone. My world froze. I screamed her name, ran across the grass barefoot, panic pounding in my ears. I found her 2 minutes later, crouched behind the slide giggling at a stray cat. But those 2 minutes changed me. They planted a terror that never left. Now Sophie is 9, still playful, still curious, still with that same wild streak in her eyes that makes her wander toward whatever catches her attention. And me? I'm 34, divorced, working as a freelance graphic designer from home, and still carrying that ache of almost losing her once. I don't care how many people call me overprotective. I'd rather be that than careless. On July 16, 2024, it was just another shopping trip, or at least it should have been. Walmart on Ocean View Boulevard was bright that afternoon. Sunlight streaming through the automatic doors, shoppers filling carts with produce, snacks, and discounted summer goods. Sophie and I had finished with the fruits and vegetables and were heading toward the candy aisle, which of course was her favorite. "Can I get the sour worms this time?" she asked, tugging on my arm with that pleading smile. "Let's see the prices first," I told her, half laughing, half weary. She knew I was soft when it came to candy. I was comparing 2 brands of chocolate bars when it happened. Just a second. Just that 1 second where I turned to glance at a worker cleaning up a spilled stack of juice boxes. Sophie was right there. Then she wasn't. My chest hollowed out. My voice cracked before I realized it was me screaming, "Sophie, Sophie!" Heads turned. People stared. But I didn't care. I spun in every direction, scanning faces, carts, the aisles. She was gone. And in that instant, I felt it. The old terror. The nightmare come back to life. I ran down the aisle, my shoes skidding against the polished floor, my heart hammered so hard it drowned out the store's soft music. I kept shouting, my voice rising until it was nothing but raw panic. A woman in front of the candy display turned, frowning. "Is something wrong?" "My daughter, she was right here. She's 9, brown hair, pink shirt with stars. Did you see her?" My words tumbled out in gasps. The woman shook her head, her expression shifting from irritation to alarm. She put a hand on my shoulder. "Let's find security." I didn't wait. I bolted to the end of the aisle, peering left, then right. Shoppers moved lazily, unaware my entire world had just fractured. I pushed past carts, knocking into a stack of cereal boxes. At the customer service counter, I nearly threw myself at the attendant. "My daughter's missing. She was just here, and now she's gone." The young employee's eyes widened. She stammered, "Oh, okay, ma'am. Please, calm down. We'll call security." "Don't tell me to calm down," I snapped. Just do something. Within minutes, 2 uniformed staff arrived, walkie-talkies buzzing. They asked for Sophie's description, repeating it into their radios. "Lock the exits," one of them ordered. I clung to the counter, shaking. My mind was a whirlpool of images. Sophie giggling, Sophie reaching for candy, Sophie's hand slipping out of mine, and beneath it all the darkest fear. What if she wasn't in the store anymore? Then a guard returned, face pale. "We've checked the cameras. A man in a delivery uniform was seen walking with a little girl toward the exit. He was holding her hand." The words hit me like a knife. My knees buckled. "What do you mean? Who? Who was he?" The guard swallowed hard. "We're calling the police right now." They showed me the footage on a small monitor in the security room. My body trembled as I leaned over the desk, staring at the grainy video. There she was, my Sophie, walking beside a man in his mid-40s, his hair cropped short, his face calm. He wore a delivery uniform, navy blue with patches on the sleeves. He wasn't dragging her, wasn't forcing her. He simply bent down, said something, and she took his hand. Anyone watching would have thought he was helping a lost child. Anyone but me. I slammed my hand against the desk. "That's not an employee. She doesn't know him. You have to stop him." Police sirens wailed outside within minutes. Officers rushed in, barking orders, splitting teams between the exits and the parking lot. My breath came in gasps as one of them asked me, "Does your daughter know this man?" "No," I nearly screamed. "She doesn't know him. She wouldn't go willingly unless she thought, unless..." My voice cracked. Unless he tricked her. The officers poured into the lot. One stayed with me, trying to keep me calm, but all I could picture was Sophie's small hand in that man's grip, walking closer to the sunlit doors. My body shook uncontrollably. "Please find her. Please." Then the radio crackled. "We've got him, North Lot. Attempting to get her in a van. Child is safe." My knees buckled with relief and terror all at once. Safe. They said safe. But I wouldn't believe it until I saw her with my own eyes. I ran outside, barely able to breathe. The parking lot was a sea of flashing lights, police cars, and stunned shoppers frozen in place. My eyes darted wildly until I saw her. Sophie. An officer was kneeling beside her, holding her gently as she clung to his sleeve, sobbing. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, but she was alive, unharmed. I screamed her name and sprinted, scooping her into my arms. "Mom!" she cried, her small body shaking. "He said you sent him. He said you told him to take me to the car." My chest caved in. The man had lied, tricked her, used the trust children instinctively gave to adults. I looked past her and saw him. Henry Collins. His hands were cuffed behind his back, his eyes darting in rage as 2 officers shoved him toward a cruiser. He shouted incoherently, spitting curses. I wanted to claw at him, to scream, to demand why. But all I could do was hold Sophie tighter. The officer beside us said quietly, "He's a convicted predator. Shouldn't have been anywhere near this store. You and your daughter were very lucky." Lucky. The word stung. Because luck meant it could have gone the other way. In the weeks that followed, life didn't return to normal. It couldn't. Sophie slept in my bed, waking up crying some nights, whispering, "Don't let him come back." I stroked her hair and promised over and over that she was safe, even when I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Every shopping trip became a battle. My eyes scanned every face, every uniform, every aisle. I clutched Sophie's hand so tightly she sometimes winced, but I couldn't let go. Then came the worst revelation. Police told me Collins had been seen loitering around Walmart for weeks, studying the layout, noting busy hours, and planning his move. He wasn't just opportunistic. He was calculated. He had chosen this day, this time, my daughter. That truth buried itself inside me like a stone. Evil wasn't always loud. Sometimes it dressed in uniforms, smiled politely, and waited for the perfect moment. Months passed, but I never stopped hearing the echo of that day. Sophie laughed again eventually, but there was always a trace of hesitation in crowded aisles. And me? I became something harder, sharper, not just protective, but vigilant, because I knew now monsters didn't hide under beds. They walked among us, unnoticed. Evil often wears ordinary faces, slipping into our lives when we least expect it. As parents, as communities, we cannot afford complacency. Caution is not paranoia when it saves a life. 1 second of inattention can change everything. Protecting our children means never forgetting that danger can hide in plain sight, and that vigilance, though exhausting, is the truest form of love. Crowds have always unsettled me. Not in the normal, socially anxious kind of way, but in a quieter, gnawing sense. Since childhood, I've had this irrational fear of losing myself in a sea of people, like some faceless tide could pull me under and no one would notice. My mom used to call it your lost people thing. Whenever I was little and clutched her hand too tightly at malls or fairs, she'd say, "Relax, Michael, you're not going to disappear." But I never believed her. Now I'm 27, a graphic designer who works from home, and for the most part I avoid chaos. Online shopping is my drug of choice, but after moving to Los Angeles last year, I decided to do something insane. Go to Walmart on Black Friday. I told myself it was for the experience. Maybe I wanted to prove I wasn't the same kid who used to panic at carnivals. The Walmart on Sunset Boulevard was a madhouse when I arrived that morning. Neon sales signs flickered overhead. Carts crashed like bumper cars, and the air smelled of French fries drifting from the food court. People shouted, laughed, cursed, and fought over televisions stacked high in the electronics section. It was noise layered over noise, the kind that makes you feel dizzy if you stand still too long. I gripped my cart like an anchor, trying to breathe evenly. "You wanted the madness," I muttered to myself. "So here it is." That's when I noticed them. A family, mother, father, and little girl, standing near the toy aisle. They looked wrong. Not in a dramatic horror movie way, but wrong in the way someone walking against the flow of a crowd looks wrong. Their movements were off. The father, tall and gaunt, pushed an empty shopping basket as if it weighed 100 pounds. The mother clutched the girl's hand, every step slow and deliberate, like she was wading through invisible water. The girl, maybe 6 years old, didn't even glance at the flashing sales signs or shelves stacked with dolls and Legos. She just stared straight ahead, pale and hollow-eyed. And then the mother looked at me. Her lips parted slightly, mouthing 2 words without a sound. "Help us." I blinked. For a second I thought I'd imagined it. But when I focused again, the family was gone. The aisle stood empty except for a cart filled with toys, some of them stained with something dark, something that looked disturbingly like blood. The hairs on my arms stood up. My old fear surged back, that feeling of people vanishing in crowds. But this time it wasn't me. It was them. I didn't move right away. My hands locked around the handle of my own cart, palms sweaty. I kept staring at that abandoned cart like it might explain itself. The toys inside looked ordinary enough. Boxed board games, a Barbie set, action figures. But a few packages had smears of red. Blood. Or something pretending to be blood. The crowd pressed around me, oblivious. A man shoved past with a TV balanced in his cart. A woman cursed under her breath, her child whining for candy. The chaos churned on, swallowing everything while this silent, wrong thing sat in the middle of it. I forced myself to walk closer. My heart thumped in my ears. I touched one of the toy boxes lightly with my finger. It was sticky, red, real. "Hey, excuse me?" I grabbed the sleeve of a Walmart employee rushing by. She was maybe 19, red vest half-zipped, hair frizzed from stress. "Someone left this cart here. It's got blood on it. You should probably—" She yanked her sleeve free, barely glancing. "Sir, if it's a spill or something, just leave it. We've got a cleanup crew." "No," I insisted. "It's not a spill. There was a family here just a second ago. They looked off. The mom said help us, and now they're gone. Don't you—" She rolled her eyes. It's Black Friday, dude. People leave carts everywhere. If you're stressed, maybe take a break at the cafe. Then she darted away before I could stop her. I stood there, heat creeping up my neck. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was imagining things. Crowds can do that, make you see patterns, ghosts in the noise. But when I looked down again at the blood, the logic crumbled. Not possible, I whispered. Still, the longer I stared, the less real it seemed. People streamed around me, laughing, shouting, arms full of merchandise. No one else saw what I saw. No one cared about the silent cart in the middle of the madness. I backed away, shaken. But something inside me already knew. I hadn't imagined it. The rest of the store blurred after that. I tried to keep shopping, grabbed a discounted hard drive, some wireless earbuds, even a set of pans I didn't need. But I couldn't shake the image of that pale family. Every aisle I turned down, I expected to see them again. And in a way, I did. At the end of the clothing section, I caught a glimpse of the little girl's hair, light brown, braided neatly. She turned the corner before I reached her. My pulse jumped. I hurried after her, but the aisle was empty. Near electronics, I thought I heard the mother's voice, faint under the roar of the crowd. "Help us." I froze. Shoppers jostled past me, annoyed. I scanned faces. Nothing. Then I saw the father. Tall, gaunt, basket still empty. He stood near a shelf of discounted laptops, staring blankly at the floor. I blinked, and he was gone. I pressed my palms into my eyes, whispering, "You're losing it. You're just tired." But when I lowered them, the world looked sharper, colder. Every toy out of place, every tipped shelf, every subtle disturbance screamed that they'd been there, that I hadn't imagined them. And yet no one else noticed. The realization crawled through me like ice. If no one else could see them, then I wasn't watching living people. I was watching echoes, ghosts. But why me? I left the store shaken but clinging to reason. Maybe I'd hallucinated. Maybe someone had cut their hand and left blood on the toys. Maybe exhaustion was messing with me. But the thought festered. Days passed, then weeks. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's lips forming those words. "Help us." Finally, I searched online. Walmart Sunset Boulevard disappearance. The first hit was a news article dated November 30th, 2022. My blood ran cold. It detailed the disappearance of the Whitman family, Evan, Clara, and 6-year-old Lila, vanished during a Black Friday sale at that exact store. Security footage showed them entering, but never leaving. No trace was ever found. The case went cold within months. I read the article 3 times. Heart-pounding. The description matched perfectly. The gaunt father. The pale child. Clara's age. All of it. I hadn't seen hallucinations. I'd seen them. I never went back to that Walmart. In fact, I avoided crowds altogether. Supermarkets, concerts, festivals, each felt like a trap. Every time I caught a glimpse of a child in a pink coat or a mother's weary eyes, I thought of Clara. They weren't alive. That much I understood. But they weren't gone either. They were stuck, trapped in a loop of fear and desperation, invisible to the living except in rare moments. Why me? Maybe because I'd always feared vanishing in crowds. Maybe my childhood paranoia tuned me to their frequency. Or maybe the store itself wanted me to see, to remember. Months later, when I finally left Los Angeles, I drove past that Walmart one last time. It looked ordinary. Neon signs, shopping carts, families laughing as they carried bags to their cars. But I knew what lingered inside. Some evils don't scream. They whisper, hidden beneath the noise of daily life, waiting for the next crowded day to resurface. And sometimes the lost don't disappear. They stay. The frenzy of life often blinds us to the quiet tragedies around us. In the rush for bargains, attention, or survival, people can vanish. Sometimes literally, sometimes in the unnoticed ways of neglect and indifference. What haunted me most wasn't just the Whitman's fate. but how easily a family could disappear in plain sight. Never let the noise of the world drown out the silent cries for help. To truly see others is to keep them from vanishing. They say a man's life is made up of little routines. Wake up, drink coffee, go to work, come home, go to bed. Do that long enough and people start to think they know you. My co-workers at Walmart would have sworn I was steady as they come. Good old Greg, they called me. I showed up early, stayed late if asked, never complained about stocking shelves or cleaning up after customers who left soda spills in aisle 12. I wasn't the kind of guy to raise his voice, much less his hand. But a man can only carry silence for so long before it breaks him. I'd been married almost 10 years when I started noticing things that didn't add up. My wife came home late more often, said she was stuck at the office or out with friends. She smiled less at me, more at her phone. There were nights she slipped into the shower right when she got home, like she wanted to wash the day off before I could even hug her. At first I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed, maybe I was being paranoid. But then came the nights she didn't come home at all. I tried to confront her once. I asked if there was someone else, and she laughed. Not a warm laugh, the kind that cuts you down, makes you feel small for even asking. That laugh stayed in my head. I'd be stacking detergent bottles at work, and I'd hear it echoing in the buzzing lights above me. That's when I started watching. Not her, him. Simon Carter, my manager, 45, sharp dresser, always had an answer ready. Married too, though you wouldn't know it from the way he talked about long nights at the store. I saw him glance at his phone and smirk. I saw him leave early once, same time she said she was working late. Those little coincidences stacked up in my mind until they weren't coincidences anymore. Every shift I worked, I'd catch him at the end of the aisle, clipboard in hand like he was pretending to be busy. I'd picture his hands on her, picture them laughing about me when my back was turned. Each time the knot in my chest pulled tighter. I stopped being Greg the good employee. I started being Greg the watcher. I watched every move Simon made, every call he took, every break he snuck out for. My coworkers didn't notice the change. They were too busy gossiping, joking, living their lives. But I noticed. I noticed everything. I told myself I wasn't the kind of man who made scenes, but there are limits. Everybody's got one. Mine came on Tuesday, March 5th, 2025. It was almost 11 at night, the store mostly empty. A few of the night crew were restocking chips and soda in grocery. The hum of the refrigerators was the loudest sound in the place. I was in aisle 7 stacking soup cans when I saw him, Simon, headed for the break room. Just him and that damn clipboard. I gripped the handle of the bat I'd hidden in the stockroom weeks earlier. Told myself it was for protection in case some drunk wandered in. But deep down, I knew. I'd been waiting for this night. I muttered under my breath as I followed him. Payback. Justice. He won't laugh anymore. He didn't even notice me slip through the break room door behind him. That was his mistake. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and greasy burritos. The vending machines hummed. Candy bars lined up behind the glass like little witnesses. Simon was bent over the counter, scribbling on his clipboard. "Simon," I said. He turned, surprised. "Greg, you need something?" I closed the door behind me. The bat hung loose at my side, hidden for now. "You think I don't notice?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, steady, but hollow, like it belonged to someone else. "Notice what?" His brow furrowed. "My wife," I snapped. "The late nights, the looks, the laughs, you think I don't see it? You've been screwing her behind my back." He blinked, stunned. Then he laughed. Not cruel, just shocked. But that sound, God, that sound. It was the same laugh my wife gave me when I asked her the truth. "Greg," he said, holding his hands up, "you've got this wrong. I swear, man, it's not me. I've never even talked to her outside of work." "Don't lie to me," I shouted. My chest burned hot, my head buzzing like the lights overhead. I swung. The first hit caught his shoulder. The clipboard clattered to the floor, papers scattering. He stumbled back, eyes wide. "Jesus, Greg, stop!" But I couldn't. The second swing cracked against his head. He dropped, blood smearing down the vending machine glass. Gasps echoed outside the door. Someone had heard. Feet scrambled down the aisles, shouts of, "Call the cops!" bouncing off the walls. I stood over him, chest heaving. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from release. It was like the storm inside me had finally broken. I pulled out a cigarette, lit it with steady hands, and took a drag. The smoke curled lazy in the humming light. When I exhaled, the store wasn't the same anymore. The door burst open and two of the night crew froze in the doorway. One gasped, hand over her mouth. The other backed away, shouting, "Call an ambulance!" Simon groaned, tried to move but collapsed again. His blood pooled across the floor, creeping toward the vending machines. I leaned against the counter, smoking. Their wide eyes made me chuckle. "He had it coming," I said. They scattered. Within minutes, the store was chaos. Employees fleeing, lights flickering as alarms blared. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I just sat in the break room, bat across my lap, staring at the mess I'd made. My co-workers' voices rang in my ears, shrill with panic. Greg lost it. Greg's gone crazy. But in my mind, I was calm. Calm like I hadn't been in months. When the cops stormed in, guns drawn, I didn't resist. They shouted commands, shoved me to the floor, cuffed my hands. My cigarette rolled across the linoleum, burning out beside Simon's blood. "Why'd you do it?" one officer demanded. I looked him dead in the eye. "Ask my wife." At the station, they grilled me for hours. What happened? Why'd you do it? Was it planned? I told them the truth, or what I thought was the truth. That Simon had been sleeping with my wife, that I couldn't take it anymore. But the detective shook his head. "Greg, Simon Carter's got nothing to do with this. He's been under our eye for months. Gambling debts, sure, but no affair. You've been looking in the wrong direction." I frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, grainy surveillance shots, text message records. My wife. My brother. I stared at the pictures until the room tilted. My own brother. Not Simon. All this time I'd been chasing the wrong man, feeding my anger with the wrong face. The detective's voice was distant. "You let your suspicion blind you, Greg. And now a man's fighting for his life because of it." My stomach dropped. I wanted to scream, to tear the walls down. But all I could do was laugh, broken and hollow. I'd destroyed everything for nothing. They put me in a cell. Cold concrete, steel bars. Silence. But the silence wasn't the kind that heals. It was the kind that eats you alive. I thought about Simon, about the blood on the floor. I thought about my co-workers, their terrified faces. I thought about my wife and my brother, tangled together in betrayal I hadn't seen until it was too late. The news spread fast. Quiet Walmart worker snaps. That's what they called me. The good employee who never complained, who suddenly turned into a monster with a bat. I could almost hear my co-workers whispering about it in the break room, long after I was gone. I imagined the nightmares they'd have, seeing me standing there, cigarette in hand, while Simon bled at my feet. The store itself would never be the same. People would stock shelves with one eye on the door, afraid of what might be waiting behind it. Fear lingers in walls, in light, in silence. I'd carved my rage into that place forever. As for me, I sit here in this cell replaying it all over and over. Not the swing, not the blood, but the moment before, when I could have chosen different, when I could have walked away. But I didn't. And that choice is mine to carry until the end. Suspicion is a poison that blinds the heart and warps the mind. When we let jealousy and anger control us, we don't see the truth. We see only the reflection of our own fears. In my rage, I destroyed an innocent man and scarred everyone around me. The real betrayal was there all along, but I was too consumed to see it. I moved to Springfield 6 months ago after my breakup with Mark. It had been messy. Too many unanswered texts. Too many nights of waiting for him to show up when he never did. I needed a fresh start. A place where no one knew my name or my past. A place where I could simply be Samantha Hargrove. Working at Walmart's night shift gave me that. The aisles were dimly lit. The hum of refrigeration units constant and oddly comforting, and the occasional soft click of my shoes against the linoleum gave the night rhythm. I was alone most nights, and I liked it that way. It gave me space to think, or not think at all, and the quiet, strangely, became a companion. I had a habit of staying behind to organize things properly. Other night shift employees, if they were working at all, would just shove boxes onto shelves and call it a day. But I believed in order. Headphones lined up just so, smart speakers arranged by model, chargers tucked neatly into bins. It gave me a sense of control I didn't always feel outside these fluorescent halls. Tonight, the electronics aisle was a mess. Boxes were stacked haphazardly from my previous shift, and I was in the middle of straightening them when I first heard it. A soft, deliberate step behind me. I froze, holding a box of Bluetooth earbuds like a shield. "Hello? Anyone there?" My voice sounded louder than I expected in the empty aisle, echoing off the metal shelving. Silence answered me. I told myself it had to be another overnight employee, maybe one who had stayed back to do stock. But no one should have been here. I checked my watch. 3 a.m. The store was supposed to be empty. The footsteps grew louder, faster, somehow keeping pace with my own heartbeat. Goosebumps pricked along my arms, and I felt that cold, creeping sensation of fear curling down my spine. I spun around, expecting someone, anyone, but the aisle was empty. A faint whisper of cold air brushed my neck. I shivered, gripping the box tighter. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, making the shadows shift in ways that weren't natural. My chest tightened. I couldn't explain it logically, but I knew that fear wasn't imaginary. It was real, pressing down on me, making the walls feel closer, the shelves taller. And then I remembered something. Months ago, I'd read a news article about a man, an overnight Walmart employee, stabbed during a robbery right here, in this very aisle. His body had been found behind the shelves, tucked away like part of the display. Employees whispered about him in hushed tones, saying he never clocked out. I'd laughed it off at the time. Ghost stories were for bored coworkers and lazy internet posts. But right now, in the cold hum of the electronics aisle, it felt like he was standing behind me. I swallowed hard, setting the box down, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the footsteps didn't stop. They moved closer, circling, deliberate, almost playful. My breath quickened. I glanced down at the floor and froze. Dark footprints, smeared and glistening, led from the stockroom toward the back exit. They were fresh. Blood? I couldn't be sure. My phone had no signal. The store PA system was dead. And I realized with growing horror that the lights were flickering more violently now, casting long, unnerving shadows. I called out again. "Is someone there?" No answer. Only the dragging of feet that seemed to come from all directions at once. I grabbed a box, holding it in front of me and backed toward the main aisle. The temperature dropped suddenly, my breath misting in front of me. I had never felt cold like this indoors. "Who's there?" I demanded, voice shaking, but the only reply was the rhythmic, ghostly sound of dragging footsteps. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a homeless person had found a way in. Maybe some prank from coworkers. But the store's doors were locked, the alarms armed. There was no one supposed to be here. And yet the footprints gleamed in the fluorescent light, leading directly toward the stockroom. I moved slowly, trying not to step on them, though each step felt heavy, deliberate. My heart pounded so loud I was sure it would give me away. My hands shook as I reached the end of the aisle. The dragging had stopped. Silence pressed down. I peeked around the corner of the shelving unit. Empty. Nothing but rows of headphones and tangled cords. My chest heaved, sweat prickling at my neck despite the cold. I leaned back against the shelf and tried to collect myself. It's fine. It's just nerves. You're overreacting. But the cold wasn't over. It lingered, brushing against my arms, against my neck, and I felt a presence behind me even though no one was there. I remembered the news article again, the poor man who never clocked out. Something about it nagged at the back of my mind. Maybe it wasn't just a story. Maybe it was a warning I hadn't listened to. I backed away, moving toward the main aisle, trying to find the emergency phone. My thumb brushed the wall-mounted phone, but no dial tone. Dead. The store PA was also dead. No alarms, no lights, but the flickering fluorescence above. I was completely cut off. The sound returned. Heavy breathing, circling, just out of sight. I gripped the box like a shield, whispering to myself to stay calm. It's nothing. Nothing is happening. But the dark footprints were undeniable now, smeared across the floor like a trail of some invisible predator. I could feel them. I could feel the story of the man who never left the aisle, the rumor creeping through the night. Something inside me screamed, "Run." I bolted toward the stockroom, praying someone was there. Anyone. The heavy breathing followed, always a step behind, just out of reach, just out of sight. When I reached the stockroom, it was empty. Nothing. No one. The cameras were blank, completely blank, as if the aisle had never existed. I staggered back, hands trembling, unable to comprehend it. The only evidence left was the trail of bloodied footprints, leading nowhere. I leaned against the cold metal of the stockroom door, panting, trying to calm my racing heart. I replayed the footsteps in my mind, the cold brushing my neck, the dragging sound that had no source. I remembered the rumors from veteran employees, the man who never clocked out, the shift that ended too soon, the aisle that trapped him in a loop. At the time, I'd thought it was just storytelling, but standing here, surrounded by faintly glistening footprints and blank security footage, it felt real, terrifyingly real. I tried to rationalize it. Hypothermia? My mind playing tricks? But no explanation fit. No rational answer could explain the cold, the movement I felt, the intangible presence that seemed to stalk me. My phone still had no signal. I shouted for help, my voice bouncing off the empty aisles, but no one answered. Only the hum of refrigerators and the flicker of fluorescent lights responded. I walked slowly down the aisle again, tracing the footprints with my eyes. They stopped abruptly right where the aisle should have ended but didn't. The shelves extended as if the floor beneath them had shifted in reality. I could almost see him, a figure frozen in a moment of time, trapped forever in his final shift. I called out again, louder, my voice shaking. "I know you're here. Show yourself." Nothing. Only the cold, the dragging, the ever-watchful emptiness of the electronics aisle. My mind raced with the what-ifs. What if he was still here? What if he was waiting? Lurking? The footsteps began again, circling. I turned, box clutched to my chest, and stumbled backward. The air grew thicker, the cold, sharper. My breath fogged, forming a ghostly veil in front of me. I felt a brush on my shoulder, just a fleeting, almost gentle touch, but it sent me over the edge. I ran. I ran through the store, past frozen soda aisles, past flickering displays. The stockroom was my goal. Maybe security cameras, maybe an exit, anything. When I reached it, the area was empty. Cameras showed nothing. No figure, no movement, nothing. The aisle existed and didn't exist at the same time. Only the footprints remained, a vivid, haunting reminder of the worker who never left. I quit that night. I left my jacket, my personal items, everything behind. I refused the promotion they offered later. I couldn't go back to a place that held a presence I could not explain, a cold that touched me even in the warmth of daylight. Friends teased me for overreacting, for letting fear control me. But they weren't there in the aisle. They didn't feel the cold brush along their neck, the whispers that didn't exist, the footsteps that had no owner. Sometimes I dream of it. The dark footprints, the dragging sound, the aisle that never ended. I tell myself it was imagination, that it was just the stress, the isolation, the long hours. But deep down, I know some things are real, even if you can't see them. Some things are trapped in the loops of their own tragedy. And we are lucky, sometimes, to witness them at all. I will never return. And I will never forget. Some things can't be explained or controlled. Fear is real, but so is caution. We may laugh at ghost stories or dismiss warnings as superstition, but sometimes respecting the unknown and the limits of our own understanding can save us from harm. Curiosity without caution can lead us into spaces where time, reality, and safety no longer operate as expected. I guess I should start with the part where we decided to do something stupid. My name's Ryan, I'm 17, and I've always been the one pushing the limits. Being suspended from school for that reckless prank last month didn't slow me down. It just made me hungrier for attention. My friends Taylor, Marcus, and Zoe were always tagging along, and I knew Zoe would be filming anything for likes. It was Friday night, 11:30 p.m., and the Walmart on West 7th Street was practically empty. A light rain slicked the parking lot, making it glisten under the flickering streetlights. Most of the store was dark, but the snack and electronics aisles still hummed with fluorescent lights and the faint whirring of security cameras. It felt like the perfect backdrop for our biggest prank yet. We had masks and fake guns. I held my own tightly in my hand, feeling the weight and pretending it was real. Taylor and Marcus had theirs, and Zoe's camera was ready to catch everything. "Remember," I whispered, crouched behind the shopping carts. "It's just a joke. No one gets hurt. Just scream, wave the guns, get it on camera, and leave." Zoe nodded, adjusting the angle on her phone. Marcus smirked nervously. Taylor kept glancing at the empty aisles, biting her lip. I felt that adrenaline buzz, the thrill, the chance to prove ourselves. We pushed open the automatic doors and slipped in. My heart thumped in my chest, echoing in the empty store. The aisles smelled like floor cleaner and stale popcorn. I motioned to Marcus, and he spun his fake gun with a nervous grin. Zoe whispered, "This is gonna blow up online," as she followed us. We stormed into the electronics aisle, yelling as loud as we could. "Everyone on the ground," I shouted, waving my gun. My mask made my voice sound lower, rougher. Zoe whispered commentary, giggling behind the camera. I didn't notice the man until I heard the real voice. "Drop your weapons." My stomach dropped. I turned and saw a man standing near the headphones display, gun drawn, eyes locked on us. Officer Harris. Real gun. Real authority. And in that instant, chaos exploded. "Hands in the air now," he barked. Marcus froze. Taylor's knees buckled. Zoe let out a sharp scream, fumbling to hold the camera steady. "It's just a joke. It's fake. We're filming," I shouted, pulling off my mask, trying to show him we weren't dangerous. But my words sounded hollow, even to my ears. Taylor was shaking violently. "Please, don't shoot," Zoe screamed again. "Marcus, don't move." The officer didn't flinch. Every second felt stretched, elastic, like the world had slowed down. Then the shot rang out. Marcus collapsed near the cereal aisle. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading across the floor tiles. I screamed. Taylor dropped to her knees, trying to shake him awake, tears streaming. "Somebody help him. Somebody do something." Zoe's voice cracked in panic, her phone clattering to the floor. It skidded under a shelf, still recording the chaos from a low angle. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into thin air. My mask lay forgotten at my feet. "We didn't mean it. Please don't let him die," I cried, panic rising like a wave. Customers screamed and ran, slipping in the wet floor and crashing into shelves. My heart was a drum in my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Marcus, our friend, our brother in arms in mischief, was lying on the floor, motionless. By the time the paramedics arrived, the damage was done. Marcus didn't survive. The following weeks were a blur. Walmart closed for repairs and cleanup. We were arrested almost immediately. Taylor, Zoe, and I, all charged with involuntary manslaughter. Our parents couldn't speak. Friends avoided us. The town was split. Some blamed Officer Harris, claiming he overreacted. Most blamed us for our reckless, stupid prank. Every day I replayed the moments over and over. Marcus on the floor, Zoe screaming, the chaos echoing around the empty store. Even watching the footage Zoe's phone captured from under the shelf made my stomach churn. I could hear the panicked breathing, the shrieks, our frantic voices. School was impossible after that. Rumors followed me through hallways. I couldn't look anyone in the eye without seeing Marcus's blood in my mind's eye. Taylor was trying to hold herself together, but I could see the cracks. Zoe blamed herself too, though she had been filming. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that aisle. The lights flickering overhead, the sound of a gunshot, the body of my friend crumpled on the floor. Every mundane sound now sent me jumping. A door creak, a car backfiring, a shadow moving too fast. The store employees whispered about the electronics aisle being cursed. Phones ringing with static, carts moving slightly on their own, fleeting shadows of screaming teens. I didn't believe in curses, but the memory of that night felt like a lingering presence, a warning. I wanted to turn back time, to rewind, to stop myself from thinking it was a good idea. But that wasn't possible. The only thing left was to live with the guilt. I started seeing a counselor, sitting in a room, explaining the fear, the regret, the panic. It helped in small doses. But at night, alone in my room, I still heard Zoe's screams, Taylor begging, and Marcus calling my name in my imagination. Our community meetings were tense. Parents screamed at us. Neighbors stared. Officer Harris didn't come to court often. I didn't blame him. The law was complicated, but the emotional fallout was brutal. Zoe barely spoke to anyone. Taylor went silent. I tried to reach out, but every call, every text, felt meaningless. Marcus was gone. Nothing could fix that. Even now, passing a Walmart, I tense up. The lights in the electronics aisle seem too bright, too menacing. I can't stand to be alone in stores at night. The fear isn't rational, but it's mine. I carry it every day. Months passed, but the wound never healed. Court hearings ended in guilty pleas, probation, community service, counseling. And still, I had nightmares. I realized then that the prank was never about fun. It was about attention, about proving something to people who didn't matter. We treated real lives like props, and Marcus paid the ultimate price. Sometimes I imagine the last moments in the aisle, Marcus laughing as we filmed, then chaos, panic, fear. It's a vision I can't shake. The supernatural whispers in the electronics aisle. They aren't real, but the memory is haunting enough. Every time I think of that night, I hear phantom echoes of Marcus's voice, Zoe's scream, my own panic. I'm older now, or at least I try to be. I don't seek attention anymore. I don't chase thrills for likes. The memory of Marcus, of that night in Walmart, has changed me. It taught me that actions have consequences far beyond what you can imagine. I still drive past that store sometimes. The lights in the electronics aisle flicker, and I shiver. Not because I believe in ghosts, but because I remember the real horror. Fear, chaos, and the irreversibility of our choices. I've learned to respect limits, to value people over thrills, to think before acting. Nothing online, nothing social, is worth a life. Recklessness, even when disguised as humor or adventure, can have permanent, devastating consequences. Actions taken without thinking, without empathy, can change lives forever. The pursuit of attention or thrills is never worth the cost of human life, and ordinary places can become stages for tragedy when carelessness collides with reality. When my parents told me we were leaving the city for Willow Creek, I thought they were joking. The name alone sounded like something from an old ghost story. But it was real. A small, forested town in Washington with a single main street, 2 diners, and a library that smelled of cedar. We moved there in June of 2021, and I hated almost everything about it. The air felt too still, the nights too dark, the woods too close. At 17, I wasn't great at starting over. Friends came slowly to me, and after years in crowded classrooms and buzzing neighborhoods, Willow Creek felt like stepping into silence. The one exception was Elise Carver. She lived at the edge of town, in a sprawling, century-old house that seemed to breathe with its own life. Creaking floors, a stone fireplace that swallowed whole logs, and a backyard that sloped into a wall of pines. Elise was everything I wasn't: bold, funny, unafraid of being herself. She became my anchor in a place where I otherwise drifted. That summer, our friendship became a constant rhythm. She teased me for being cautious, and I grounded her when she pushed limits. She was the kind of girl who suggested jumping into lakes at midnight or hiking trails with only a phone flashlight. I was the one who asked if we should maybe bring bug spray or at least tell someone where we were going. We worked because we were different. When she invited me for a weekend sleepover, I didn't hesitate. My parents, buried in their work schedules, were just relieved I had a friend. We had plans for the weekend: movies, games, and documenting nature around her property for a small photography project. Elise was convinced we could capture the kind of shots her art teacher would rave about. I was more skeptical, but I didn't say no. The first night started the way most of our nights did, with snacks, jokes, and games. We settled in the attic, surrounded by boxes of old board games, forgotten photo albums, and trunks that smelled faintly of mothballs. The windows overlooked the forest, black silhouettes of trees pressing against the horizon. Elise made it feel like an adventure rather than something ominous. Around 10:30 p.m., she suggested we go for a short walk along a narrow trail at the edge of her yard. My stomach sank, but her enthusiasm was contagious. She pulled me out the door with 2 flashlights and a grin. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Fireflies blinked lazily among the ferns, and the crunch of our shoes against the trail felt too loud. My instincts told me it was too dark, too late, but Elise was glowing with excitement. She pointed out trees like landmarks, describing where the trail eventually opened into a meadow. That was when I heard it, the rustling in the underbrush. At first I thought it was a deer, but the low growl that followed wasn't like any animal I recognized. I froze, clutching my flashlight tighter. "Relax," Elise whispered, grinning. "It's probably a raccoon." I tried to laugh, but the sound stuck in my throat. My flashlight beam jittered over the trees, catching only shadows. Then came the snapping of a branch, loud, deliberate. Elise flinched this time. We both swung our beams toward the sound, but the woods stared back in silence. Just as I exhaled, I saw it, a faint glint in the distance, like light bouncing off glass or metal. It moved slowly, too high for an animal's eyes, too steady to be chance. My pulse hammered in my ears. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Elise shook her head quickly, though I could tell she had. We turned back, quickening our pace, but the sound behind us, footsteps, subtle but distinct, mirrored every move. We reached Elise's house in record time, slamming the back door shut and locking it. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the flashlight. Elise, trying to brush it off, laughed nervously and said, "Okay, that was creepy, but it's fine, it's nothing." But I knew from the look in her eyes that she didn't believe her own words. We retreated to the attic, throwing ourselves into movies to drown the unease. The glow of the screen, the hum of the old DVD player, the crackle of popcorn, it should have been comforting. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it, a soft tapping at the window. At first I thought it was branches shifting in the wind, but the rhythm was too precise, too intentional. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. "Elise," I whispered, nudging her. She frowned, hitting pause on the movie. The room fell into silence, and the tapping came again. We both turned toward the window. Nothing but blackness pressed against the glass. Then, without warning, my camera, left on the floor, flashed. The burst of light startled us both, freezing the room in stark white for a second. The camera had been off, its battery nearly dead. Yet the flash repeated, again and again, as if triggered from outside. My skin prickled. "I think someone's out there," I whispered. Elise's bravado faltered. She chewed her lip, her gaze flicking to the attic door. "It's probably, I don't know, a reflection?" But neither of us believed that. The tapping grew louder, more deliberate. And with each burst of the camera, shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally across the attic walls. My chest tightened as though the air itself had grown heavy. We huddled together on the floor, listening to the sounds of the house, the ticking of pipes, the groan of wood, and beneath it all, the faint impression of movement outside. I wanted to call my parents, the police, anyone, but the thought of explaining what was happening froze me. We had no proof, just shadows and sounds, and a fear I couldn't name. "Maybe it's a prank," Elise whispered, though her voice wavered. But deep down I knew this wasn't a prank. Someone, or something, was playing a game with us. By 3 a.m, we were no longer pretending to be calm. The tapping had spread, echoing along different windows of the house, moving like footsteps circling the property. Then came the sound I'll never forget. The creak of stairs. Not outside. Inside. "Elise," I hissed, gripping her arm. We stared at the attic door as the sound drew closer. Step by step, slow, deliberate, waited. I grabbed my flashlight, hand slick with sweat. When the sound reached the top, I flicked it on and aimed at the doorway. For a split second I caught a glimpse. A tall figure, pale, draped in a ragged jacket. It moved past the corner of the stairwell and vanished into shadow. Elise gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Did you see that?" I nodded, heart slamming against my ribs. We didn't wait. We bolted down the stairs, tripping over each other in panic. Our screams shattered the silence as we rushed into her parents' bedroom. They woke in confusion, but the terror on our faces must have said enough. Her dad grabbed a bat and checked the house, every room, every closet. He searched the yard with a flashlight, the beam cutting through the mist that hung low in the grass. Nothing. No footprints. No intruder. No explanation. Her parents tried to soothe us, insisting it must have been our imaginations, the house settling, the woods playing tricks. But I knew what I'd seen. Elise knew too. That night, I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, sunlight seemed to wash away some of the fear, but unease clung to me. Over breakfast, Elise's mom joked about horror movies and teenage imaginations, but Elise and I shared a look that said neither of us believed it. When we reviewed the photos on my camera, the truth hit harder than any words. The pictures weren't of us. They weren't random shots of the attic. They were of the figure. Frame by frame, it appeared closer. At first in the corner, a blurred shape. Then clearer, pale features, a shadowed face. And finally, too close, the figure inside the attic standing over us as we huddled on the floor. I dropped the camera, bile rising in my throat. Elise whispered, "How is that possible?" We didn't see anyone come in. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the sequence again. There was no mistaking it. Someone had been in the attic with us. We begged her parents to call the police. They humored us but didn't push hard. Without evidence beyond eerie photos, there wasn't much to investigate. Still, an officer came by, took a report, and promised to patrol the area. That afternoon, Elise's dad checked the locks, the windows, even the attic crawl spaces. Everything was secure. Too secure. And yet, the memory of that figure lingered. That night, I begged Elise not to stay in the attic again. We slept on the living room couch, lights blazing, but neither of us found rest. Every sound made us flinch. Every shadow seemed alive. I counted down the hours until daylight. wishing desperately to be anywhere but that house. Weeks later, life in Willow Creek returned to its sleepy rhythm, at least on the surface. Elise and I never went back into the woods at night. We stopped bringing up the figure, the photos, the sounds. But silence doesn't erase memory. One afternoon, while helping Elise's mom sort through boxes in the attic, I found a stack of old newspapers. Buried among them was an article that froze me in place. It was about the house, about the previous owner, a man who had vanished without a trace years ago. Last seen walking into the forest. His body was never recovered. The photo in the article was faded but familiar. A tall man in a worn jacket, pale eyes staring at the camera. I shoved the paper back into the box, my skin crawling. We never talked about it. Not directly, but from then on, Elise kept her windows locked, and I stopped walking home after dark. The woods around Willow Creek still whispered when the wind shifted, and I knew, deep down, that what we saw that night had never really left. Curiosity can push us into places where fear becomes more than imagination. That night in Willow Creek taught me that safety is fragile, and trust in instincts matters more than bravado. Shadows and sounds may be easy to dismiss, but sometimes the danger we sense is real. Listen to the unease, respect the warnings, and never ignore the voice inside that whispers when something isn't right. I never thought a simple trip to the pharmacy could change the way I saw the world. I've been working at Walmart for almost 3 years now, long enough to know the rhythm of the place, long enough to recognize that some people walk through these doors carrying more than just shopping lists. That night started like any other Tuesday, except it wasn't Tuesday in the usual sense. Outside, the sky was bruised with storm clouds, and rain had started drumming against the roof, splashing over the asphalt parking lot in irregular, impatient bursts. I remember thinking how ordinary it all felt. Inside, the store was crowded, families pushing overloaded carts, couples arguing over cereal brands, kids dragging backpacks through aisles, the usual hum of fluorescent lights and scanners. But beneath it, I could feel tension, thick, heavy, as if the storm outside had seeped through the walls. I was stocking allergy medicine in aisle 16 when I saw him. Mark Donovan, a guy from the construction crews that had been doing renovations at a nearby store, storming in with a face like someone had lit a fire in his chest. And he wasn't alone. Dragging behind him was Claire, his wife. "Mark, please, calm down," she pleaded, her voice trembling, almost drowned by the chatter and beeping around us. But Mark's eyes were wild, scanning the pharmacy shelves like he was hunting, and then they locked on her. "You think I'm stupid?" he shouted, echo bouncing off the tile floors. Customers froze mid-step, carts abandoned, mouths open. The fluorescent light seemed harsher in that moment, their buzz more insistent. I knew them both, at least by sight. Mark always had that restless energy about him, the kind that made him good at construction, but not so great at patience. Claire worked part-time in the cosmetics section, usually quiet, polite, bending over counters with a soft smile. And yet, in that instant, I could see a fracture running through them, raw and exposed. Mark brandished a small pocket knife. My stomach sank. He swung it at her purse, the leather tearing with a sharp snap that made people recoil. Claire stumbled back, her hand clutched to her chest, eyes wide. "Stop it! People are watching!" a customer yelled, but Mark didn't hear. He was past reason. Employees ran in from the aisles shouting, trying to intervene. One of them locked the pharmacy doors from the inside, cutting off the only route, while another tried to calm Mark. The tension was unbearable. I stayed in the corner of the aisle, pretending to check a shelf, heart hammering. Mark knelt suddenly, pressing the knife to his stomach. "If you won't tell me, I'll do it myself." His voice cracked in places I didn't want to hear. And just like that, the storm outside became nothing. The storm was here, in the aisle, in the people frozen around him, in Claire's panicked eyes. I had to do something, but every instinct screamed to wait, watch, stay alive. I saw the rage in him, But I also saw fear, the kind that comes from betrayal, the kind that twists a marriage into a powder keg. By the time paramedics arrived, the chaos had exploded into a mix of blood, tears, and rain-soaked shoes. And yet, as I watched the ambulance doors close, I felt a strange chill. This wasn't just an isolated event. This was the kind of human collision that leaves a mark long after the lights go out. Mark's knife wound was shallow enough to survive, but the memory of it is sharp, permanent. I was still shaking hours later when I replayed the scene over and over in my head. I kept thinking about Claire, the way she had crumpled in the corner, wet hair plastered to her cheeks, apologizing to strangers even as her world collapsed. And Mark, standing there with the storm in his chest, knife trembling in his hand. I later learned the truth through the security footage, and it made the whole situation even more surreal. Claire had been meeting someone from her office in secret, using the pharmacy as a private rendezvous. I couldn't reconcile her quiet smile at work with the betrayal captured on tape. It was a secret she carried into the most ordinary of spaces, and it exploded into violence in front of an unsuspecting public. I remember walking past the pharmacy the next day, the air still heavy with tension. Employees whispered quietly, exchanging glances, avoiding the aisle entirely. Some claimed they could still hear faint crying, soft scraping sounds as if the store itself remembered the night's events. It was unsettling, how a place as mundane as Walmart could hold on to memory, trauma, and human cruelty like a sponge. Mark's actions haunted me. I understood the rage, the betrayal, the fear, but seeing it manifest so violently in public was jarring. It made me question how well we know those closest to us, how easily trust can be shattered, and how quickly ordinary moments can become extraordinary crises. Even weeks later, I caught myself glancing at couples in the aisles differently. A tight grip on a shopping cart handle, a quick glance over a shoulder. The slightest tension could hint at hidden storms, and I realized how fragile the mask of normalcy is. The store closed early for the night after the incident, employees traumatized, customers shaken. The police report was filed, paramedics made their rounds, but the real damage was intangible. Claire left work for weeks, guilt etched in every movement, every quiet apology to colleagues. Mark never returned. He had survived, but his marriage was in ruins, his rage unresolved, and his fear embedded in his memory. I kept thinking about the storm outside that evening. It mirrored the emotional turbulence inside the store, the unpredictability of human behavior, the sudden eruption of secrets into public view. Every aisle, every shelf became a potential stage for human conflict. I also realized that life doesn't give warnings. You can't predict who will betray you, who will react violently, or which ordinary moment will become extraordinary. And when it does, bystanders, the customers, the employees, the people in the aisles, are swept into it, powerless and haunted. Months passed, but the memory didn't fade. Employees whispered about the aisle, sharing stories in hushed tones. Some claimed to hear quiet sobbing or a scraping sound near the pharmacy shelves. It became a cautionary tale. Secrets, we learned, are combustible. Even the most public, mundane spaces can hide private catastrophes. I started noticing small things differently. The tension in couples' hands, the wary glances, the way people flinch when confronted with fear or anger. Life is fragile, and betrayal, even when concealed, carries a weight that can explode at the worst possible moment. Looking back, I realize that the story of Mark and Claire is more than a tale of violence or betrayal. It's a reminder of human vulnerability, the fragility of trust, and the hidden storms that people carry. Ordinary places like Walmart, mundane routines, can become stages for extraordinary pain. I learned that the moral isn't just about betrayal or anger. It's about awareness, compassion, and the weight of secrets. People suffer quietly, and often we are witnesses without understanding. And sometimes the only thing left after a storm is memory. The faint echo of tears, the smell of rain on asphalt, the silent recognition that life is more fragile than we imagine. Secrets have consequences. Ordinary moments can become extraordinary tragedies. And sometimes the moral is simple. Notice, listen, and never take trust for granted. Even in mundane, everyday spaces, human emotions and secrets can erupt with devastating consequences. Moving to Raleigh for work had been supposed to be exciting. A new city, new apartment, new design firm, everything I thought I wanted. But 3 months in, I was starting to feel the weight of isolation. My friends were scattered across the country, my family back in Chicago and at work. Everyone seemed too busy to notice me outside of meetings. I liked my job. It paid well, and I enjoyed the creative work. But the late nights and solitary weekends were starting to get to me. Late-night grocery runs became my therapy. Something about walking through nearly empty aisles, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, the distant beeping of checkout machines. It calmed me. I could think. I could breathe. And on this particular night in spring 2024, I needed it more than ever. Walmart Supercenter on Meadowbrook Drive was quiet as I pushed my cart past the pasta aisle. Outside, the rain had slicked the parking lot, turning the asphalt into a dark mirror for the flickering streetlights. A few cars sat scattered, but mostly it was empty. Normally, I didn't notice such details, but tonight, everything felt sharper. After grabbing a few essentials, I walked toward the entrance, my cart rattling behind me. That's when I saw her. A woman standing beneath a flickering light, her long dark hair hiding her face. She was whispering, barely audible, but it made my stomach twist. "Hello? Are you okay?" I called softly. The whisper cleared just enough to make my blood run cold. Jacob Harris." I froze. My fingers tightened on the cart. "How do you know my name?" I muttered, stepping back toward my car. She didn't move, but the voice followed me, repeating my full name softly, rhythmically. My heart started pounding. I fumbled with my keys, trying not to look back. Rain started pattering again, tapping against the asphalt in uneven rhythms. The flickering light above her made her shadow stretch and bend unnaturally. I finally unlocked the car and slammed the door shut, my breathing heavy. Glancing into the rearview mirror, I saw her, sitting silently in the back seat, smiling at me. My hands tightened around the wheel. No, I muttered, slamming the brakes and spinning the car around. When I looked back, nothing. Empty. The back seat was empty. Driving home, every mirror became a source of anxiety. I kept expecting her whisper, that smile. The scratches along the inside of my car windows the next morning confirmed my worst fears. Someone, or something, had been there. But who? And why? After that night, everything changed. I stopped making late-night trips. I avoided the Walmart parking lot entirely. Friends joked that I was imagining things, that maybe stress from work was affecting me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was out there, watching, waiting. I spent hours reviewing security footage, my eyes straining over blurry images of the nearly empty parking lot. Nothing unusual appeared, just me walking to my car. But the scratches told a different story. Work became harder. Every time I left the office late, every time I passed a shadowed alley, my stomach clenched. The fear wasn't rational. It wasn't logical. Yet the memory of her whispering my name in that rain-slicked lot replayed constantly. One night while lying in bed, I swore I heard it again. Jacob Harris. My pulse skyrocketed. I jumped up, checking the apartment, every corner, every shadow. Nothing. But my instincts screamed that she, or someone like her, was real. I installed extra locks, a dash cam, motion sensors. Nothing could replace the sense of safety I'd lost. Every time I drove, I checked mirrors obsessively. Every creak of the apartment made my heart hammer. I began noticing details I'd never paid attention to before. A light in the neighbor's window flicking in odd patterns, a shadow sliding past the blinds when no one was home, a car idling across the street for longer than it should. Sleep became impossible. My mind refused to stop replaying that night. The whispers, the way she disappeared from the car. Rationally, I knew someone couldn't just vanish into thin air, but the scratches proved she, or it, had been there. Weeks passed, and the paranoia grew. I started leaving work earlier, avoiding grocery trips after dark. But even in daylight, I felt uneasy. People seemed sharper, more menacing. Shadows seemed to move where they shouldn't. Then came the first call. A voice so soft I almost didn't recognize it, but unmistakable. "Jacob." I bolted upright in my apartment, fumbling for the phone. Silence. No call on the line. No missed call. Just the lingering sound in my head, a whisper that seemed to crawl along the walls. It was happening again, and it wasn't just a memory. I talked to a few friends about it, but most laughed nervously, suggesting stress or imagination. I didn't believe them. Not anymore. I knew fear when I felt it. And this was different. Cold, methodical, deliberate. Someone had marked me that night. Someone had entered my personal space to remind me that I was being watched. I doubled down on my precautions. Cameras, locks, a new car alarm. But the whispers persisted. Shadows flickered at odd angles, always just out of sight. And I began noticing patterns. Every time I drove past certain streets, I felt the prickle of recognition, the sense that she, or something like her, was nearby, always just beyond my view. I couldn't avoid it forever. One night, walking home from work, I decided to confront the fear. I walked through the quiet streets of Raleigh, the rain soaking my coat, heart thumping. I wanted to see if she, or whatever she was, would appear. And she did. A shadow detached itself from the corner of the alley, dark hair over a hidden face. Her whisper, "Jacob. Jacob Harris." I shouted, demanding answers. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" No reply. Only the whisper, repeating, mocking. I advanced, but when I got close, nothing. Just an empty alley. The rain-slicked pavement reflected only the dim glow of the streetlights. It hit me. She wasn't just a person. She was fear itself. She wasn't tangible, not entirely. She was the manifestation of doubt, paranoia, isolation. Every late night, every moment of vulnerability had drawn her out. Months passed. I moved apartments, changed routines, and yet the feeling never left. I learned to live with the whispers, the shadows, the knowledge that some threats aren't rational, some presences aren't human. I started reconnecting with friends, spending more time outside in daylight, reclaiming normalcy in small increments. But I always carried the memory of that night, of that rain-slicked Walmart parking lot, of the whispered name that made my blood run cold. It taught me vigilance, awareness, respect for the unknown. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear her, "Jacob, Jacob Harris." And I stop, take a breath, remind myself that fear can be real, but it doesn't have to control you. Fear often thrives in isolation, feeding on our vulnerabilities. But vigilance, awareness, and cautious trust help us navigate the unknown. Not all threats are visible, and sometimes survival isn't about defeating fear. It's about recognizing it, respecting it, and learning to live in a world where shadows may hide more than just darkness. I've worked the night shift for most of my adult life. There's a strange rhythm to it, quiet, monotonous, and lonely in a way that digs into your bones. My coworkers at the hospital always joked that the graveyard shift either makes you a philosopher or a ghost. I was neither. I was just tired. On that particular night, it was nearly 2 a.m. when I finally clocked out. My feet ached from 12 hours of walking the ward, answering call lights, calming patients, and checking vitals. The one thing that kept me going was the promise of a hot shower and maybe a frozen pizza from Walmart on my way home. Walmart at 2 in the morning is unlike any other place. It hums with artificial brightness, the kind of fluorescent glow that makes you lose track of time. I've always thought it feels like stepping into a dream. Rows of endless products, aisles too quiet, and employees pushing carts stacked with cardboard boxes instead of customers. That night, the parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered like forgotten toys. I pushed through the sliding doors, the whoosh of air greeting me. The greeter gave me a sleepy nod, and I grabbed a basket, telling myself this would be quick. I needed laundry detergent, milk, and something easy for dinner. I started down the household aisle, the faint squeak of my sneakers echoing. That's when I noticed him. A tall man, wearing a gray hoodie, stood halfway down aisle 9. He wasn't shopping, he wasn't browsing. He was pacing, back and forth, muttering under his breath. I glanced at him once, then looked away. It wasn't my business. Maybe he was talking to himself, maybe he was on the phone. But when I turned down the next aisle, I felt that prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the one that makes you instinctively speed up your steps. And sure enough, when I looked toward the far end, there he was again. Same hoodie, same muttering. He wasn't holding anything. Not a basket, not a cart, just empty hands, trembling slightly. I swallowed hard and reminded myself that it was late, and people get weird when it's late. Still, every aisle I turned down, he appeared at the other end, staring but never moving closer. His eyes seemed hollow, like he wasn't fully present. By the time I made it to the self-checkout, my nerves were shot. I scanned my items quickly, my fingers fumbling with the barcodes. That's when I felt it, a presence directly behind me. I turned my head just slightly, and there he was. The man in the hoodie stood right behind me, so close I could smell his breath, sharp with something sour. His face was expressionless, his lips moving like he was whispering to himself. His hands trembled at his sides. "Sir, can I help you?" The cashier called, her voice cutting through the thick silence. She must have seen my face because she picked up her walkie-talkie. Within moments, a security guard strode over. But when I turned back, the man was gone. He had vanished. I gathered my things quickly, my hands shaking. The guard checked a few aisles, but he came back empty-handed. "Sometimes transients wander in," he said with a shrug. "Nothing to worry about." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply wrong. And I was right. 3 nights later, I saw his face again, on the evening news. He wasn't a shopper. He wasn't lost. He was a patient who had escaped from the state psychiatric hospital just down the road, and he had been missing for 3 nights before they caught him. The same 3 nights I had seen him in Walmart. When I saw his picture on TV, my stomach dropped. The anchor said his name was Ethan Marlowe. Age 32, committed to the state psychiatric hospital 2 years ago. The report didn't give details, just said he was unstable and potentially dangerous. I muted the TV and sat there, frozen. That same blank expression, that same gray hoodie, those trembling hands. I hadn't imagined it. At work the next night, I told Rachel, one of the other nurses, about what happened. She leaned across the break room table, her eyes wide. "Wait, are you serious? You saw him? In Walmart?" "Yes," I whispered. "He followed me through the aisles. He was right behind me at checkout, and then he just disappeared." Rachel shivered. "Girl, that's a horror movie waiting to happen. Didn't security do anything?" "They looked," I said, "but they brushed it off. He was gone before they showed up." She shook her head. "That's insane. You need to tell the cops you saw him." But I didn't. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was denial. Or maybe it was the nagging thought that they wouldn't believe me, just like security hadn't. For days afterward, I couldn't shake the unease. At home, I double-checked the locks 3-4 times before bed. At work, every shadow in the hallway made me flinch. Even driving at night felt different. Headlights in my rear view seemed to linger too long. Then, a week later, I came home from work around 2:30 a.m., arms full of groceries. As I approached my apartment building, the fluorescent security light flickered. And that's when I saw it. A gray hoodie, hanging over the railing on the second-floor landing. My groceries hit the ground. I froze on the sidewalk, my breath shallow. The hoodie swayed slightly in the breeze. Empty, harmless. But my gut screamed otherwise. Just a hoodie, I muttered to myself. Coincidence? I forced myself upstairs, unlocked my door, and slipped inside. But the sense of being watched gnawed at me. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator felt amplified. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I convinced myself I was overreacting. But when I opened my fridge to grab milk, I noticed something strange. The carton was missing. Not empty. Missing. I stood there, cold air brushing my face. Had I misplaced it? No. I remembered buying it. I remembered putting it on the shelf. Then I noticed my front window lock. Twisted. Bent slightly out of place. Someone had been inside. I called Rachel in tears. He was here. I know it. Claire, call the cops right now. But when the officers came, they barely glanced at the window. Probably wear and tear, one said. Doesn't look forced. And the milk? I pressed. Maybe you left it at the store. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded numbly as they left. That night, I pushed my dresser against the window. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. 2 nights later, I was walking to my car after work. The parking lot was mostly empty, the night air heavy and damp. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. I spun around, but the lot looked empty. I quickened my pace, fumbling for my keys. The footsteps grew louder, quicker, closing in. Hey! A voice shouted. I dropped my keys, heart pounding. It wasn't Ethan, it was Marcus, one of the security guards from the hospital. He jogged up, breathless. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. You work nights, right? Yes, I said cautiously. We've been trying to track Ethan Marlowe, Marcus explained. We think he's been circling the neighborhood. You haven't seen him, have you? I swallowed. I think he was in my apartment. Marcus's eyes darkened. Then you need to be very careful. He's not violent unless cornered, but he's unpredictable. If you see him, call us immediately. His words didn't comfort me. They only made the shadows feel heavier. It was another late night when it happened. I came home, keys trembling in my hand, the hallway eerily quiet. As I opened my door, I froze. Inside, sitting at my kitchen table, was Ethan Marlowe. His hoodie was gone, replaced by a stained undershirt. His hands trembled as he picked at the wood grain. "Why are you here?" I whispered, my voice breaking. He looked up slowly, his eyes glassy. "They keep watching me," he murmured. I thought you were safe." My blood ran cold. "Ethan, you can't be here. You need help." His face twisted. "They lie. They always lie. But you looked at me like I was real." I backed toward the door, fumbling for my phone. "I'm calling for help." He stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor. "Don't leave me," he shouted. I froze, heart racing. "Ethan, sit down. Please, just sit down." For a moment I thought he would lunge, but then his shoulders sagged. Tears welled in his eyes. "They'll take me back," he whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "And they'll help you." The knock on my door was sudden and loud. Security had arrived, maybe tipped off by Rachel, who I'd texted earlier. Ethan didn't fight when they entered. He just lowered his head as they handcuffed him. When they led him away, he looked back at me once, not angry, not violent, just broken. Evil doesn't always wear a mask, and danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it trembles quietly at the far end of a grocery aisle. Ignoring your instincts can cost you more than peace of mind. It can cost you safety. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Speak up. Take precautions. Protect yourself, even if others dismiss your fears. Because the scariest part wasn't that Ethan Marlowe had found me. It was that for nights before, I kept convincing myself it wasn't real. And sometimes denial is the most dangerous choice of all. I never thought something as simple as a midnight grocery run would change my life, but that's how it all began. Looking back, I wish I had just stayed home, gone to bed hungry, and saved myself the nightmare that followed. But on that January night, my fridge was empty, my stomach was growling, and I convinced myself I needed milk, eggs, and maybe a frozen pizza to get through the week. The roads in Elmridge were quiet that night, unusually quiet. Streetlights flickered through the fog, and the cold gnawed at my fingers even through my gloves. PriceSmart sat at the edge of town, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the icy air. Only a handful of cars dotted the parking lot. Inside, the place smelled of bleach and old coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a harsh glow. I pushed a squeaky-wheeled cart down the aisles, heading for frozen foods. That's when I heard it. A soft giggle. Not the laugh of a grown-up, but the high-pitched tinkle of a child's laughter. I froze. It was close, just around the corner. When I turned, I saw her. A little girl, no more than 8, stood in front of the freezers. Her hand pressed against the glass, leaving faint condensation. She wore a bright red coat with a fur-lined hood, too clean and too out of place in that sterile aisle. Her cheeks were pale, her lips bluish, and her eyes, wide, unblinking, staring right into me. I stepped closer, raising a hand. "Hey, are you lost? Where's your mom?" She blinked once, then, in the space of a heartbeat, she was gone. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. The aisle was empty, just the hum of freezers and rows of TV dinners staring back at me. I told myself I was imagining it, a trick of the light, lack of sleep. But minutes later, when I turned to leave, she was there again, further down the aisle. Same coat, same wide eyes. I abandoned my cart and rushed to the front. At the checkout, I muttered to the cashier, "I think there's a kid in your freezer aisle." Little girl, red coat. His face stiffened. He leaned forward and whispered, "You saw her too?" I frowned. "What do you mean, too?" He bagged my items, avoiding my eyes. "People see her sometimes. Customers, night staff, manager. Don't go looking for her. Just don't." I drove home, shaken, my mind replaying the image of her pale face pressed against the glass. I tried to sleep but couldn't. By sunrise, one thought had taken root. I had to find out who she was. The next day, I couldn't focus on work. My boss yelled at me for mixing up lumber orders, but all I could see was the girl's red coat. That night, instead of going home, I found myself back at PriceSmart. This time, I didn't shop. I lingered near the cafe area by the registers, nursing a watery cup of coffee until I saw the same cashier from the night before. His name tag read, Eddie. When he went on break, I caught up to him in the smoking area outside. "Look," I said, "I need to know about that girl, the one in the red coat." Eddie's hands shook as he lit a cigarette. He exhaled a cloud of smoke, eyes darting around like he didn't want anyone to overhear. "She's been around for years," he said finally. "Mostly night shift workers see her. Sometimes customers like you. Always in the frozen section." "But who is she?" I pressed. Eddie shrugged. "Story goes, the store was built on the site of an accident back in the 80s. Family car slid off the road during a snowstorm, flipped into a ditch. Parents got out. Little girl didn't. They never found her body." The air felt heavier, colder. "And you're saying that's her?" "All I'm saying is, she shows up. And when she does, weird stuff follows. Power outages, stock falling. One guy swore he felt a hand grab his ankle in the freezer aisle." Eddie stubbed out his cigarette. "Don't mess with it, man. Just shop somewhere else." But I couldn't. Something inside me refused to let it go. Over the next week, I dug. The library had old newspapers on microfilm. I spent hours scrolling through yellowed headlines until I found it. Tragic accident on Route 9. Car overturns in blizzard. Child missing. The date was February 12, 1986. The missing child's name, Emily Carter, age 7. I stared at her school photo printed in grainy black and white. Round cheeks, wide eyes, red winter coat. I couldn't shake the thought. She wasn't just some legend. She was real. I showed the article to Eddie during another break. He frowned. Damn, so she had a name. He rubbed his face. Listen, man, you gotta stop. People who poke around too much, they don't do well. Night manager before me. Quit after she followed him home. Followed him home? I asked, my throat dry. Eddie nodded grimly. He said he'd see her in mirrors, in his yard at night, and once, in his freezer at home. He left town, never came back. I tried to laugh it off, but unease gnawed at me. Because the truth was, I'd already started hearing things at home. Little noises in the kitchen, a faint giggle when the house was quiet, and sometimes, late at night, I swore I saw a shadow in my hallway. Small, coat-shaped. I went back one last time, determined to face her. It was nearly 1 a.m. when I stepped into Price Mart, the store emptier than ever. I walked straight to the freezer aisle. Emily, I said softly. My voice echoed. I know who you are. I know what happened. For a long moment, nothing. Just the buzz of the lights above. Then slowly, frost began to spread across the freezer doors, thick and white, until the glass turned opaque. My breath clouded in the air, and there, behind the glass, she appeared. Her hand pressed to the ice. Her lips moved, but no sound came. I leaned closer. What do you want? The frost shifted. Letters etched themselves into the glass. Home. A chill ran through me. You want to go home? She nodded once. Then her face twisted, eyes darkening, lips peeling back as she screamed silently against the glass. The sound hit me a second later, high-pitched and piercing, rattling the windows, forcing me to stagger back. When I blinked, she was gone. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face pressed against the glass. Home, she had said. But what did that mean? Finally, I drove back to Route 9, to the spot the article mentioned. Snow lined the ditches even now, decades later. A crude wooden cross stood half buried in the ground, long forgotten. I knelt beside it, my breath misting in the air. Emily, I whispered, you don't have to stay there anymore. You're not forgotten. You can rest. The wind shifted. For a moment, I swore I heard that same giggle, softer now. And then, silence. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. No giggles, no shadows, just quiet. I never saw her again. Some tragedies leave echoes that refuse to fade until someone listens. Dead are never truly gone as long as they're remembered. We carry their weight when the world forgets them. Sometimes the greatest kindness we can offer, whether to the living or the dead, is acknowledgement, compassion, and the reminder that no one is invisible. I never used to believe in ghosts, spirits, or anything that couldn't be explained with logic. My mom raised me on the idea that everything had a reason, even if we couldn't see it right away. Strange noises were just the house settling, shadows in the corner were just poor lighting, and eerie feelings were nothing but nerves. That's how I lived most of my adult life, comfortable in the certainty that the world was solid, grounded, and explainable. Then came that night at Walmart. I was 34 at the time, working as a nurse on rotating shifts. It was late in September, and I'd just gotten off a long evening shift at the hospital. My apartment was quiet, empty, and I dreaded the silence. I'd been living alone for years, ever since my last relationship fizzled out. So instead of going straight home, I stopped by Walmart. It was nearly 10 p.m., and the place was mostly deserted, just a handful of customers wandering around under the harsh fluorescent lights. I didn't even need much, just some groceries and maybe a new charger for my phone. But like always, I ended up in the electronics section, killing time while pretending to shop. That's when it happened. The intercom crackled overhead. I expected the usual. Attention Walmart shoppers, the store will be closing in 1 hour. Instead, A low, gravelly male voice whispered, so soft I almost thought I imagined it. "Sarah." I froze, a boxed set of earbuds in my hand. My first thought was that some employee was pulling a prank, but the tone wasn't playful. It was intimate, like someone standing right behind me, speaking into my ear. Before I could move, the voice continued, "Happy birthday, Aunt Sarah." My stomach lurched. My birthday had been 3 weeks earlier, and I hadn't told anyone at work. The voice went on, smoother now, deliberate. "Your mother's name is Margaret. She loved yellow roses, do you remember?" I dropped the earbuds. The sound echoed in the empty aisle. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My chest tightened, heart racing, as the voice whispered one more detail, something that made my blood go cold. 17 Ridgeview Lane. Your first home, the one with the blue shutters. That was the house I grew up in. A detail buried deep in my memory, something I hadn't spoken aloud in years. The intercom fell silent. I finally moved, staggering backward until I nearly collided with another shopper pushing a cart. He gave me a weird look, but I barely noticed. My mind raced. How could anyone know those things? Shaking, I marched up to the front of the store and demanded to speak to the manager. The night manager was a young guy named Chris. Couldn't have been older than 25. He looked confused when I explained what had just happened. "Ma'am, nobody's been on the intercom in the last half hour," he said, his tone somewhere between dismissive and concerned. "That's not possible," I snapped. "I heard it. My name, my birthday, my mother's name. Things no stranger should know." Chris sighed, then gestured toward the customer service desk. "Let me check with the associates. Maybe someone messed around." He asked 2 employees, both teenagers, if they'd touched the system. They shook their heads quickly. One even looked genuinely spooked. "I swear I heard it," I insisted, voice trembling now. It was a man's voice. Chris hesitated. "Look, I can call maintenance to double-check the intercom, but it doesn't sound like it's working right now. Sometimes it crackles on its own." "It said my name," I pressed, my voice breaking. "Do you think static does that?" He didn't answer. Just gave me a strained smile, the kind people give when they think you're unstable. Humiliated, I grabbed a basket and threw a few random items into it. Milk, cereal, bread. Anything to justify my presence. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I finally walked out into the parking lot, I froze. A man was leaning against my car. The faint glow of the overhead light caught his face. My breath caught in my throat. It was my father. But that couldn't be. My father had died in a car accident 20 years ago. I stopped dead in my tracks, clutching the basket to my chest. The man looked up at me and smiled faintly, just like Dad used to when I was a kid. His eyes even had that same tired kindness, the corners crinkling. For a split second, I almost ran to him. My brain short-circuited. He looked exactly the same as the day I'd last seen him, down to the denim jacket and the scuffed work boots. Not older, not aged, the same. "Dad?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. The man didn't answer, just tilted his head slightly, watching me. I dropped the basket on the pavement, eggs cracking inside. My legs wobbled as I approached slowly, each step heavier than the last. "Dad, how are you here?" Silence, only that faint smile. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Tears blurred my vision. "This isn't real," I whispered. "You're not real." He straightened up from the car, the faint smile never leaving his face. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the far end of the lot. I stumbled after him, calling his name. By the time I reached the row of parked trucks, he was gone, vanished. I searched everywhere, but the lot was empty. No footsteps, no shadow, nothing. When I finally got back to my car, my hands fumbled with the keys. My whole body was trembling as I slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors. For the first time since childhood, I prayed out loud. I went to the police the next day, told them everything, the voice on the intercom, the man in the lot. how he looked exactly like my father. The officer on duty was polite but skeptical. "Ma'am, Walmart intercoms don't just whisper personal information. And if someone was impersonating your father, we'd need video evidence." They sent someone to pull the security footage. I sat in a stiff chair, waiting. My heart pounded as they replayed the parking lot camera. But there was no one by my car. Just me, standing frozen in the middle of the lot, basket in my arms, staring at nothing. "I don't understand," I whispered. Worse, when they checked the in-store footage, the intercom never picked up my name. In fact, there was no record of any announcement during that time at all. The officer leaned back. Stress can play tricks on your mind. Especially working in healthcare, long shifts, exhaustion, it all adds up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood up and left. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at old family photos. My dad's face smiled up at me from worn snapshots. He looked the same as the man in the lot. Identical. Which left me with two terrifying possibilities. Either I was losing my mind, or something impossible had followed me out of Walmart. For days, I avoided the store. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice from the intercom, whispering my name. One evening, I finally gave in. I needed groceries. Against my better judgment, I returned to Walmart. The moment I walked in, the air felt wrong, heavier somehow, colder. I gripped the cart handle until my knuckles turned white. As I passed the electronics section, the intercom crackled. My breath caught. "Sarah," the voice whispered. I froze. "What do you want from me?" I whispered back, not caring if anyone heard. The intercom hissed, then went silent. I abandoned my cart and walked straight out. When I reached the parking lot, I knew before I saw him. My father, if that's what it was, stood beside my car again, faint smile on his lips. This time, I didn't approach. I unlocked the car from a distance, climbed inside, and drove off, heart hammering. In the rearview mirror, he was still standing there watching me go. What happened to me may never be explained. Maybe it was grief, exhaustion, or something far darker. But one thing became clear. The past has a way of haunting us if we don't make peace with it. Whether it was truly my father or just the echo of everything I hadn't let go, I'll never know. What I do know is this. Sometimes the dead linger not because they can't move on, but because we can't. I never thought of myself as the kind of guy who'd end up in the middle of a police investigation. Most of my life had been quiet, routine, maybe even dull to anyone looking in from the outside. 35 years old, single, no kids, no real drama. I worked long shifts at a mechanic's shop off Route 23. Grease under my nails, country radio in the background, busted transmissions on the lift. Nights usually ended with takeout on the couch and some rerun of a ball game I half-watched before falling asleep. That night was no different, at least not at first. I left work late, stomach growling, and realized I had nothing in the fridge. So, like I'd done 100 times before, I pulled into the Walmart lot after 11. The place looked deserted, just a handful of cars scattered under the dim lamps. I liked shopping late because there were no crowds, no noise, just me and my list. I parked off to the side, closer to the garden section. The lot was quiet except for a sound that cut through the night. Raised voices. At first I ignored it, assuming it was just another couple having it out in public. But then it got louder. 50 feet away by a dark sedan, a man and woman were locked in an argument. His voice was sharp, hers pleading. She stepped back, hands out like she was trying to calm him, but he followed. I caught bits and pieces. "You don't listen. I can't take this anymore. Stop lying." I hesitated, my hand on my door handle. Part of me wanted to walk into the store and mind my own business. People fight. That's life. But then he shoved her, hard enough to send her sprawling on the asphalt. The crack of her body hitting pavement echoed in my ears. "Hey!" I almost shouted, but the word caught in my throat. That's when he pulled it out. A handgun, black and glinting under the lights. He aimed it straight at her. Time froze. My chest locked up. My palms went slick. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to do something, but I was rooted to the spot. She tried to crawl backward, but there was nowhere to go. The shot rang out. It wasn't like in the movies with a drawn-out bang. It was sharp, violent, final. My knees gave out and I dove behind my car, pressing my cheek against the cold metal. I held my breath, every muscle trembling. Then, silence. When I finally forced myself to look, my stomach turned. There was blood on the ground, spreading across the yellow lines like spilled paint. But the woman was gone. The man was gone. The car was gone. Just me. Just the blood. By the time the cops showed up, I was shaking so hard I could barely explain what I saw. They searched the lot, asked a dozen questions, but all I could tell them was the truth. There'd been a fight, a gun, a shot, and now, nothing but blood. They kept me at the scene until nearly 3 a.m. Flashing lights, police radios crackling, officers pacing the lot with flashlights. One of them, a younger guy with a buzz cut, asked me the same questions over and over. You didn't get a plate number? No. You didn't recognize the car? No, dark sedan, maybe black or navy, that's all. What about him? Can you describe him? I rubbed my face, trying to picture it. Tall, broad shoulders, dark jacket, mid-30s maybe, that's all I got. And the woman? Brown hair, shoulder length, light sweater. She was maybe mid-30s too. The officer sighed, jotting notes. And you're sure it was a gun? I snapped my head up. Yeah, I'm sure. I know what a damn gun looks like. He didn't argue, but the way he exchanged glances with the older officer nearby told me something was off. They let me leave eventually, but not before warning me they'd be in touch. I drove home with white knuckles on the wheel, ears still ringing with that single shot. For days I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her hit the ground. Heard the shot again. My chest would tighten until I sat up gasping. At work, I kept zoning out, nearly dropping tools. Then, 2 weeks later, a man in a suit knocked on my apartment door. Mr. Travis Cole? That's me. He handed me a subpoena. You're a witness. The victim's name was Rachel Thomas, mother of 3. She filed domestic abuse charges against her husband last year. I felt sick. So she's dead? He paused. She hasn't been found, but the blood matched hers. We believe she was killed. I swallowed hard, the paper trembling in my hand. One more thing, he said quietly. The suspect isn't just her husband. He's a police officer, Daniel Price, still on active duty the night it happened. I leaned against the door frame, the weight of it hitting me like a punch. A cop. The guy with the gun was one of them. The courthouse smelled of old wood and nerves. When I was called to testify, I walked into that room with my hands sweating, my heartbeat rattling in my ears. The prosecutor guided me gently, asking me to describe what I saw. I told the story again, every detail I could remember. The voices, the shove, the gun, the shot, the blood. My throat tightened when I said her name. Rachel. Then came the defense. The lawyer was slick, with a smile that never reached his eyes. Mr. Cole, you said it was late, nearly midnight. Lighting was poor, correct? Yeah, but I could see. And you were 50 feet away? Roughly, yes. You admit you didn't see a license plate. You didn't see where they went. You didn't even see a body. I clenched my fists. I saw blood. I heard the gun. I saw him aim at her. He leaned in. But you didn't actually see him pull the trigger, did you? My voice faltered. No. I ducked when he fired. The defense smiled. So all we have is your assumption. I wanted to yell, to tell him assumptions don't leave bloodstains in a parking lot. But the judge's gavel cut me off. By the time I stepped down, I felt like I was the one on trial. The weeks dragged, news spread. Rachel's face appeared on local broadcasts, smiling, holding her 3 kids. My stomach turned every time. The town was divided. Some people whispered about corruption, about cops protecting their own. Others insisted Daniel Price was a good man, that he'd never do such a thing. He was still in uniform while the case dragged through hearings. Meanwhile, I lived with the gnawing fear that I'd become a target. Every time a cruiser slowed near my apartment, I wondered if it was him. I stopped going out after dark. I carried pepper spray everywhere, though I knew it was laughable against a gun. One night, my buddy Marcus came over with beers. He listened quietly as I vented. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "Did I? They're tearing my story apart. People look at me like I'm lying. Doesn't matter. Truth has weight. Maybe slow, but heavy enough to crush lies eventually." I wanted to believe him, but when I went to bed, I still dreamt of Rachel's eyes in that parking lot, wide with fear. Months later, the verdict came down. Price was found guilty of obstruction and misconduct, but not murder. Not enough evidence, they said. No body. No weapon recovered. He was stripped of his badge, sentenced to a handful of years. Light, compared to what he'd done. Rachel's family wept outside the courthouse. Her kids clung to their grandmother, their eyes hollow. I felt hollow too. My testimony had carried weight, but not enough. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't even sure I was brave. I was just a guy in the wrong place at the wrong time, left with memories I couldn't wash away. But I learned something in those long months. Silence protects no one. Speaking up may not always bring the justice we hope for, but it keeps truth alive. And sometimes that's all you can do. My name's Cassie Turner. I'm 32 years old, a single mom of a 7-year-old boy named Tyler. And if I'm honest, I never thought my life would look like this. I'd imagined something steadier. Maybe a husband with a decent job. Maybe a little house with a backyard. Maybe Sunday barbecues with neighbors. Instead, I got bills stacked on my kitchen table. An ex-husband who left when things got tough. And nights spent in a Walmart stocking shelves while Tyler sleeps at my sister's place across town. People say night shifts are easier because there aren't as many customers, but they don't tell you what it does to your body. The ache in your legs when the store finally goes quiet. The way the fluorescent lights hum into your bones. The way 2 a.m. feels lonelier than any other time of day. Most nights, I clock out, drag myself across that giant parking lot, and climb into my beat-up Chevy Malibu, praying she starts so I can just go home. Usually the lot is empty, the streetlights flickering on patches of cracked asphalt. But a couple months ago, I started noticing him. He leaned against the cart corral near the middle row, smoking. Always smoking. He never pushed a cart or carried a bag. He never looked like someone who'd just bought groceries. And every time I walked out, I felt his eyes track me. At first, I brushed it off. The mind plays tricks when you're tired. But the second week I saw him again. Same spot, same lean, same cigarette glow cutting the dark. One night, I mentioned it to the security guard, Eddie. He was a chubby guy in his late 40s who liked to scroll his phone more than actually watch the cameras. I told him, "There's this man who just stands out there, doesn't shop, doesn't leave, just watches." Eddie laughed. "It's a Walmart parking lot, Cassie. People hang out, they wait for rides. Nothing to worry about." I wanted to believe him, but my gut told me different. That gut feeling you get as a mom when your kid's quiet in the other room too long. You don't know what's wrong, but you know something is. And then came the night my car wouldn't start. That night started like any other. We'd unloaded a new shipment of dog food and laundry detergent, stacked pallets until my arms shook, and clocked out at 2:06 a.m. I dragged myself out into the cool air, yawning, clutching my jacket tight. The lot was mostly empty, except for him. There he was again, leaned against the same corral. A cigarette ember glowed red, and though it was 20 feet away, I felt his stare. I told myself, just get to the car, keys out, don't look up. I slid into the Malibu, slammed the door shut, locked it, and shoved the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. No, 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 I whispered, turning the key again. Nothing. My stomach dropped. That's when I heard footsteps. Slow, steady, gravel crunching. I looked up and he was walking toward me, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. "Cassie," he said. I froze. My blood went cold. He said my name. I'd never seen him inside the store, never seen him anywhere but that spot. My coworkers didn't know him. How could he know me? I yanked my phone out of my purse, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. But when I looked up again, he was gone. Not walking away, not ducking behind a car. Gone. By the time the dispatcher answered, my voice was trembling. "There's a man. He was just here. He knew my name. Please send someone." The police came, flashing lights sweeping the empty lot. They searched. They checked the cameras. Nothing. When the officer came back, he shook his head. "Ma'am, the footage shows you walking out alone. No one else is in the lot." I wanted to scream. "That's not true. He was here." He said my name. The officer looked at me the way people do when they don't believe you but don't want to say it out loud. I drove home in silence after they jump-started my car, and all I could think was, cameras don't lie. So what the hell was happening? Sleep didn't come easy after that. I'd tuck Tyler into bed at my sister's, drive back to my apartment, and every creak of the building felt like footsteps outside my door. At work, I tried to focus, but my eyes kept drifting to the big glass windows at the front of the store. What if he was watching from the lot right now? My coworkers noticed. Maria, a sweet older woman who stocked cosmetics, cornered me in the break room. "You okay, honey? You look pale." I hesitated, but finally whispered, "There's this man. He knows my name. He follows me to my car." Her face hardened. "Did you report it?" "Yes, but the cameras showed nothing." Maria frowned. "Doesn't mean it didn't happen. My cousin had a man stalk her for months. Everyone thought she was imagining things until he broke into her house." The thought made my stomach twist. Later that night, I asked Eddie again to walk me out. He grumbled but agreed. When we stepped outside, the lot was empty, but halfway across I saw him. Same cart corral, same cigarette. Staring. "Eddie?" I whispered. "Do you see him?" Eddie squinted. "See who?" My throat closed. "The man by the corral." Eddie shook his head. "There's nobody there." I nearly collapsed, because I saw him. Clear as day. Smoke curling from his lips, eyes locked on mine. And then, just as suddenly, he vanished. By week 3, I was unraveling. Coffee couldn't hide the dark circles under my eyes. My manager, Ms. Green, pulled me aside. "Cassie, you need rest. You can't keep working doubles." I wanted to tell her about him, about the shadow man who knew my name. But how do you explain something no one else can see? That night, I walked out determined to face him. My car had been temperamental all week, and I knew if it failed again, I'd be stuck. Sure enough, as soon as I hit the ignition, the engine died. And there he was, walking toward me, smoke trailing, whispering my name. I jumped out, heart pounding, yelling into the night, "What do you want from me?" No answer. Just that slow, steady approach. I grabbed the tire iron from my trunk and held it high. "Stay back." He stopped, smiled, and then his voice curled around me like smoke. "You shouldn't walk alone, Cassie." And in the blink of an eye, he was gone again. I quit Walmart the next morning, packed up Tyler, and moved in with my sister until I figured things out. But even then, I saw him. In reflections, in shadows, always near parking lots. One day I called the detective who had reviewed the footage. "Are you sure you saw nothing?" I asked. His voice was steady but strange. "Ms. Turner, the cameras show you walking to your car alone. But there is one thing. Every night, right around 2:10 a.m., the footage glitches, just for a second, and it's always right by that same cart corral." My skin prickled. Now, months later, I still don't know if he was real. A man. A ghost. A shadow of exhaustion and fear. All I know is I wasn't imagining the way he made me feel. Hunted. And that's something no camera can ever capture. Always trust your instincts and never let others dismiss your fears. Whether the danger is flesh and blood or something we can't explain, our gut often senses what logic and proof cannot. Safety is not about proving others wrong. It's about protecting yourself and those you love. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I never used to think much about guilt. It was one of those abstract ideas that only existed in books or late-night TV crime dramas. But that night at Walmart changed the way I looked at myself, and at ordinary spaces I once considered safe. My name is David Mercer. I'm 42, a marketing consultant, and I had a life I thought I controlled. Career climbing, a house in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a wife I'd started to feel distant from. Behind it all, though, there was the affair. Small, secret, addictive. I had convinced myself I was careful. I was wrong. It was late autumn, 11:45 p.m., the kind of late night where the store feels empty even when a few night shoppers wander through. Rain had slicked the parking lot earlier, leaving reflections of the fluorescent signs dancing across the asphalt. I had just finished a late client meeting downtown and stopped in for a few snacks and household items. My mind was foggy, already replaying arguments with my wife Claire and planning the lies I'd tell tomorrow to cover my absence. The store smelled of cold tile, cleaning solution, and the faint metallic tang of canned goods. I wandered the aisles slowly, scanning shelves for chips and soda. I like late-night shopping because nobody watches you. Nobody judges. It's quiet. Your thoughts echo back to you. I guess that's why what happened next hit me so hard. I felt eyes on me. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe a tired employee was stocking shelves or another shopper was drifting past. Then I went to the restroom. Alone, quiet. The hum of fluorescent lights above me. As I reached for the door, I felt it, a presence. Someone entered behind me, closing the door sharply so I couldn't leave. The lock clicked. My heart rate spiked before I even saw him. "I know everything about you," the voice whispered, cold, almost mechanical. "Your wife, your job, the affair. You owe me." I froze. The words weren't just words. They were knives cutting into every part of me I thought was safe. Who are you? What do you want?" I stammered, voice trembling. "Money," and silence. The man moved closer. I could barely see him. The lights didn't reach his face, only shadows. He held a small, sharp knife inches from my nose. "Don't make me repeat myself." I shook my head, backing up. I don't have that kind of money." The stranger leaned closer, almost smelling my fear. "You will. Or everyone will know." I tried to move again, pressed against the wall, but it was like he could read my every thought. Every mistake, every guilt-laden memory was an open book. My palms were sweaty, legs shaking, heart hammering so loudly it drowned out everything else. And then, as suddenly as he appeared, I pushed him aside instinctively and bolted. The restroom was empty. Just me, shaking, heart racing. Later, the police checked security footage. Nothing. No man, no confrontation. Just me, terrified, alone, staring back at myself in the monitors. I kept thinking, was he real? Or had I just conjured a manifestation of every terrible choice I'd ever made? The next morning, guilt hit me like a freight train. Claire received a text, anonymous, with photos proving my affair. I hadn't realized anyone could have been watching. Anyone could have captured moments I assumed were private. The blackmail wasn't a threat. It was reality. And all that fear I felt in the restroom, the cold, mechanical voice, the knife, it didn't matter whether it was real or imagined. It had exposed the truth I'd been running from. I quit my job that week. The office, once a place of routine and control, became unbearable. Every client call, every meeting reminded me that I was being watched, that the shadow of guilt followed me everywhere. I moved, too, out of Charlotte, away from familiar streets, familiar stores. I stopped going to late-night Walmart trips. Even the thought of fluorescent lights, the hum of the store, made my stomach churn. At first, I tried to tell myself it was paranoia. But then came the whispers. Employees talking about the silent man in the restroom, a presence that seemed to appear for those carrying secrets. Some claimed cold drafts, faint whispers, a shadow that lingered just out of sight. I didn't dare return to see if it was true. I was convinced I had seen something that existed only for me, an echo of my own guilt, corporeal and terrifying. I started noticing patterns I had ignored before. People walking into stores, glancing over their shoulders. Husbands and wives exchanging terse words, strangers moving quickly through aisles. I realized guilt isn't always obvious. It's patient, lurking, waiting for the smallest opportunity to expose itself. I remembered the knife, the voice, the mechanical certainty with which he spoke. If that man had been real, he wouldn't have needed proof. He already knew. And in that knowledge, I recognized something terrifying. Our own mistakes can sometimes feel more dangerous than any outside threat. They find us, haunt us, and make us see ourselves in ways we'd rather not. Even in new cities, I carried the fear. I double-checked locks, left lights on at night, avoided dark aisles, and whenever a stranger came too close, my pulse spiked. Walmart had been a trigger, an ordinary space-turned vessel for extraordinary guilt. I thought moving away would help me forget. But shadows have a way of following you. Dreams of fluorescent lights, echoing tile, and whispered threats became nightly visitors. Every late-night parking lot, every restroom, every mirror where I caught my reflection brought me back to that night. And the stories didn't stop. Employees claimed they could feel the presence when cleaning alone, especially those with secrets of their own. Some swore they heard soft footsteps behind them, or faint whispers that vanished when they turned. The silent man became a legend, a reminder that guilt manifests in ways we can't always explain. I knew now that my fear wasn't just for me. It was a warning. Secrets can become physical, real in ways that threaten to consume you if left unchecked. Looking back, I realized that night at Walmart was less about a man with a knife and more about the truth I had carried for too long. Guilt, secrets, betrayal, they have a weight, and that weight can appear in any space, even the mundane. I've rebuilt my life slowly, cautiously. I never returned to the store. I live with a heightened awareness of my actions, a constant reminder that hidden mistakes can explode without warning. The experience changed me, made me hyper-aware of how ordinary spaces can become terrifying when burdened with secret sins. I can still feel it sometimes. The presence, the whisper, the shadowed guilt lurking in the corner of my mind. And I know I'm not the only one. We carry our secrets, and sometimes they carry us, turning ordinary lives into extraordinary cautionary tales. Secrets and guilt are powerful forces. They can manifest in ways we cannot predict, turning ordinary safe spaces into arenas of fear and consequence. Transparency, accountability, and honesty are essential. The weight of hidden mistakes can follow us anywhere and haunt us long after we think we've escaped. I never thought I'd end up starting over in Albuquerque. When people talk about new beginnings, they always picture sunshine, freedom, and the thrill of possibility. My beginning was less glamorous. It started in the middle of a messy divorce, 3 boxes of clothes, a beat-up Honda Civic, and my 9-year-old son Liam, who deserved a lot more than the chaos I'd dragged him through. I'd married young, too young, and for a while, I thought I'd built the life people were supposed to envy. Husband, steady home, family photos on the mantle. But beneath that picture-perfect shell, there was anger, neglect, and eventually, betrayal. By the time the divorce papers were signed, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was exhausted. Still, I had Liam, and that meant everything. He was the reason I kept going. We moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. It wasn't much, thin walls, creaky floors, but it was safe enough and within walking distance of his school. I took a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. After months of feeling like the ground was constantly shifting beneath me, I craved routine. Wake up, breakfast, drop off, work, dinner, bedtime. But stability, I learned, is fragile. It only takes one moment, a glance, a shadow in the wrong place, for everything to crack. That night in July, the air felt like an oven. New Mexico summers don't let you breathe. The heat clings to your skin even after sunset. I was dead tired after work, but the fridge was nearly empty, and Liam had been asking for his favorite cereal all week. So I told him, "Come on, buddy. Quick trip to Walmart, then straight home." He grinned, always eager for outings with me, even small ones. The parking lot was full when we pulled in. Weekend crowds, cars jockeying for spots, kids running ahead of carts while parents shouted after them. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another summer night. Just another errand. Looking back, I wonder if that man had been waiting even before I noticed him. The first time I saw him, I barely paid attention. He was in the produce section. A man in his 40s maybe. Wiry build, dark hair tucked under the hood of a gray sweatshirt. What caught my eye wasn't the hoodie itself, even though it was over 90 degrees, but the way he stood. No cart, no basket, just loitering near the apples like he had nowhere else to be. I shrugged it off. Albuquerque has its fair share of strange characters. But as Liam and I made our way down the aisles picking up milk and bread, I noticed him again. Frozen foods, then near the snacks. Always close enough that I felt his presence, never so close that it seemed obvious. "Mom, can I get Lucky Charms this time?" Liam tugged my arm, holding up a bright cereal box. "Fine, but only if you promise to eat the real food first," I said, forcing a smile. I wanted to keep him focused on something other than the unease gnawing at me. Still, I couldn't help myself. I used the glass freezer doors as mirrors, stealing glances. And sure enough, there he was, pretending to scroll on his phone but watching us in the reflection. My stomach tightened. Was I overthinking? Or was he really following us? At checkout, I tried to breathe, convincing myself it was coincidence. People cross paths in stores all the time. He'd go his way, I'd go mine. Simple. But when we walked outside into the heavy desert night, I saw him again. Not inside this time. Outside. Crouched between two SUVs, pretending to tie his shoe. His face half shadowed under the parking lot lights. I gripped Liam's shoulder tighter, my pulse loud in my ears. The Walmart parking lot is a strange place at night. The lamps throw these pools of yellow light, but in between? Darkness. Places to hide. I hurried with the cart, groceries clattering. My keys felt slippery in my sweaty hand as I tried to load bags into the trunk. Every sound felt sharper. The slam of a cart against metal, the faint laughter of kids across the lot, the soft shuffle of someone moving too close. When I glanced up, the man shifted, just a small movement, like adjusting his balance. But his head turned toward us. He wasn't tying his shoe. He was waiting. "Mom?" Liam's voice broke the air, small and uncertain. "It's fine, sweetie, just get in the car." My voice shook more than I wanted it to. He slid into the back seat obediently, though his wide eyes told me he sensed my fear. I slammed the trunk shut, and that sound, it echoed too loud like it alerted him. That was when I couldn't take it anymore. My instincts screamed. Without looking back, I grabbed Liam's hand and hustled him toward the sliding doors of Walmart. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might faint, but I forced myself forward. When we got inside, the fluorescent lights felt like safety. I went straight to customer service, breathless. "There's a man outside, he's been following us. He's hiding out there between cars." The woman behind the counter blinked, then paged security. 2 guards went out. We waited, me clutching Liam's shoulders like a shield. But when they came back, they shrugged. "Nobody's out there now." Gone. Just like that. Driving home that night was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every pair of headlights in the rear view felt like they could belong to him. Every turn, every stoplight, I checked. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Liam was quiet in the back seat, which worried me more than if he'd asked questions. Silence meant he was scared too. When we finally pulled into our apartment complex, I scanned the lot before parking. Empty. Safe. I rushed groceries inside with Liam by my side, locking the door behind us the second we stepped in. That night I ordered a dash cam. I started parking only near store entrances. And I promised myself, Liam would never again be more than arm's reach away in public. But the thing that stayed with me wasn't just fear. It was the patience, the calculation. Whoever that man was, he wasn't some random drifter stumbling into my path. He was waiting, watching, choosing. And the scariest part? Nobody else seemed to notice. Weeks passed. I told friends, co-workers. Some listened, others brushed it off. "You're probably just paranoid," one said. Maybe. But paranoia doesn't crouch in parking lots. Life went on, as it always does. Work, school, errands. But that night changed me. I held Liam's hand tighter. I looked over my shoulder more often. I trusted my instincts in ways I hadn't before. Sometimes when I pass that Walmart, I still see him in my mind. The hoodie, the crouch, the stillness of a predator biding his time. And I wonder how close we came to something unthinkable. It's been years, but the memory doesn't fade. If anything, it sharpens with time, reminding me that danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits quietly in the shadows, watching. Evil doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always wear a mask or wave a weapon. Sometimes it lingers quietly, patient and calculating, waiting for a moment of weakness. Trust your instincts, even when the world tells you you're overreacting. Fear may feel inconvenient, but it exists for a reason. It's your body's way of protecting what matters most. When I first started working at Walmart, I thought the hardest part of the job would be dealing with cranky customers or memorizing those endless produce codes. I was wrong. The strangest thing about working there wasn't the long lines or the oddball shoppers. It was the building itself. My name's Diego, 22, and this was my first real job after dropping out of community college. I needed steady work, something that could help me get by while I figured out the rest of my life. Walmart wasn't glamorous, but it paid every 2 weeks and gave me just enough hours to survive. My first few weeks were normal enough. Morning shifts, endless scanning of groceries, and the occasional chat with older co-workers who'd been there forever. But I quickly noticed something odd about the back area, the break room and locker section. The lockers were dented, scratched, and a lot older than the store itself. Sometimes I'd see one hanging slightly open when no one had touched it. Other times someone would joke about a soda going missing from their bag, or a lunch disappearing from the fridge. People laughed it off, saying, "The ghost must have gotten hungry again." I thought it was just workplace banter. Every job has inside jokes, right? But the way people said it, the quiet seriousness in their tone, gave me chills. One evening, after a long shift, I came back to grab my backpack. The store was closing soon and most of the employees had already left. The fluorescent lights in the break room hummed faintly. As I stepped inside, I froze. My locker, number 27, was wide open. I knew I had closed it. I always did because I kept my phone charger and earbuds in there. But instead of my black backpack sitting neatly on the shelf, there was something else. A Walmart vest, old, faded, wrinkled, and pinned to the front was a name tag. Evelyn Carter. My heart jumped. I didn't know any Evelyn. She wasn't in my orientation group, and I'd never seen that name on the schedule. I grabbed the vest, held it up, and whispered to myself, "What the hell?" When I asked around the next day, the responses were strange. A few older cashiers shook their heads like they'd never heard the name. One girl, Mariah, frowned and muttered, "That name sounds familiar, but I don't think she works here." Later, when I checked the employee database at the service desk, the name wasn't there. No Evelyn Carter, no record of her ever working at our store. But the weirdest part? 2 nights later, her name tag appeared again, this time in locker number 14. After that first encounter, I tried convincing myself it was a prank. Maybe someone thought it was funny to freak out the new guy. But the more it happened, the harder that theory was to believe. Every few nights, Evelyn Carter's vest showed up in a different locker. Sometimes it was stuffed into the corner, other times neatly folded, but always there, with that same old name tag pinned to it. One night, I asked my coworker Rob, who'd been with Walmart for over 10 years. We were both clocking out, and I cornered him in the break room. "Hey Rob, you ever hear of an employee named Evelyn Carter?" I asked. His eyes flickered. For just a second, his usual easygoing smirk faltered. "Why you askin'?" "Her vest keeps showing up. I found it in my locker, then in others. Nobody remembers her." He sighed, rubbing his stubbled chin. "Look, people don't talk about it much, but yeah, there was an Evelyn, way back when, years before you got here. Cashier, like you." "So she did work here?" "Yeah. Didn't last long, though." His voice dropped. "She died. On shift." I froze. "Died? How?" He shrugged. "Stockroom accident. That's what they said anyway. Heavy pallet fell, crushed her. Happened overnight, barely anyone around. She was only 19. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "But why isn't she in the records?" I asked. Rob glanced around, lowering his voice. "Management don't like reminders of accidents. Bad for business, they buried it. But some say she never really left." I didn't know what to say. When Rob walked off, I stood staring at my locker, the metal door reflecting my pale face. That night, I dreamed of a girl in a Walmart vest standing at the end of an aisle. Her name tag glinted under the fluorescent lights. Her face was hidden in shadow. When I woke up, my phone buzzed. A text from Mariah. "Hey, you'll think I'm crazy, but Evelyn's name tag was in my locker tonight. Did you put it there?" I didn't reply. After Mariah texted me, I knew it wasn't just me seeing things. Evelyn Carter's presence was spreading. The next week, more co-workers started talking. A stalker named Jerome swore he heard a girl humming in the break room after closing, even though he was alone. Another cashier found her lunchbox on the floor, open, with Evelyn's name tag lying inside. People whispered about it during smoke breaks. Some laughed nervously. Others told me to quit asking questions. But I couldn't let it go. One night, while everyone else was gone, I decided to stay late. I sat in the break room with just the soda machine humming behind me. My backpack sat on the table untouched. Around midnight, the air grew colder. The locker doors rattled faintly, like a breeze had blown through. And then I heard it. Soft footsteps. I turned. Standing near the far lockers was a girl, faded blue vest, dark hair tied back, and that name tag, Evelyn Carter. She wasn't blurry or transparent. She looked real, solid. "Evelyn," I whispered. Her head tilted slightly, her eyes wide, her mouth trembling like she wanted to speak. But before she could, the lights flickered, and she was gone. The locker closest to me creaked open on its own. Inside, sitting neatly on the shelf, was her vest. I grabbed my bag and ran. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she really? Did she want something? Was she stuck? The next day, I drove to the local library. I combed through old newspapers, scrolling through microfilm the way I used to in college, and then I found it. Tragedy at Walmart, teen employee killed in accident. The article was from 2003. A photo of a smiling girl in her Walmart vest stared back at me. Evelyn Carter. The report said she died in the stockroom after a heavy pallet collapsed. Management called it an unfortunate accident. But another article buried deeper suggested faulty equipment. The case never went anywhere. I sat there staring at her face, my chest heavy. She'd been 19, my age when I dropped out of college. Just a kid trying to work and make ends meet. That night I told Mariah what I'd found. She listened, chewing her lip nervously. "So she's real," she whispered. "Yeah, and I think she's still here, moving through the lockers, trying to remind people she existed." Mariah shuddered. Then what does she want from us? I didn't have an answer. I decided to give her what she wanted, a place, a reminder that she was real. I went to management and asked if locker number 27 could be marked unassigned. They shrugged, didn't care. That night I placed Evelyn's vest neatly inside, name tag pinned straight. "Evelyn," I whispered, "this is yours. No one will take it. You won't be forgotten." For a moment, the break room was silent. Then the air grew warmer. The lockers stopped rattling. And faintly, so faintly I almost missed it, I heard a soft thank you. After that night, her name tag stopped moving. No more sudden appearances. No more humming. Locker 27 became hers, untouched. Coworkers still joked about the break room being haunted, but for me, it felt settled, like Evelyn had finally found her place. And sometimes when I pass the lockers after a long shift, I swear I feel a quiet presence, not threatening, just there, watching, remembered. Most people think working at Walmart overnight is boring. Just endless hours of unpacking pallets, restocking shelves, and sweeping up whatever mess was left behind by day shoppers. And yeah, a lot of it is just that. But boredom can wear on you in strange ways. When it's 3 a.m. and the aisles are empty, the hum of the fluorescent lights above starts sounding like whispers. The clatter of your cartwheels echoes like footsteps, and you begin to feel watched, even when you know you're alone. My name's Janine. I'd been a stalker for about 2 years, and I actually liked the night shift better than days. No crowds, no small talk, just me and the shelves. I'm not antisocial, I just enjoy quiet. But that quiet became something else the night I first heard it. Laughter. Not adult laughter, not the drunk, half-mad chuckle I sometimes got from stragglers wandering in after midnight. This was the high-pitched giggle of a child. It floated down the empty aisles, faint and quick, like it was playing tag with the hum of the lights. At first, I thought maybe someone's kid had slipped away while a parent shopped late. I set down the box of dog food I was shelving and followed the sound. My cart rattled behind me as I turned down the pet aisle and froze. There he was. A little boy, no more than 6 years old, stood barefoot on the cold tile. His hair was dark and messy, sticking to his forehead with sweat. He wore pajama pants that looked 2 sizes too small, and his small chest shivered under the bright light. "Hey, sweetie," I called gently, instinct kicking in. "Are you lost? Where's your mom?" His head snapped toward me. For a moment I thought he might answer, but then he bolted, darting between the shelves with speed that didn't seem real. "Wait!" I shouted, breaking into a run. My shoes squeaked against the floor, boxes clattering as he weaved through tight gaps. But when I turned the corner after him, the aisle was empty. I reported it to security. A guard named Martin followed me back to the monitors. We rewound the footage of the pet aisle, my heart hammering as I waited for the tiny figure to appear. But he wasn't there. The tape showed me alone, standing frozen in the aisle, calling out to no one. The next night, I tried to laugh it off. I told myself I was overtired, maybe my brain was playing tricks on me. But when I walked into the break room halfway through my shift, 2 coworkers were already talking in hushed tones. "Did you hear about the kid?" one asked, stirring sugar into his coffee. My stomach tightened. "What kid?" He glanced at me. "Some barefoot boy. Security said people keep reporting him." The other coworker shook her head. "I swear, I saw him near the self-checkout last week. He asked me where his mom was, then gone, like he vanished into thin air." I didn't say anything, just sat down, heart pounding. They hadn't known what I saw the night before, but they were describing the same child. For the next week, whispers floated among the staff. Some swore they caught glimpses of him near the toy section, or darting between clothing racks. A janitor told me she heard crying in the bathroom stalls at 4 a.m., but when she opened the doors, they were all empty. Everyone joked about the store being haunted, but under the laughter was unease. I told myself to let it go. But one night when the store was still and the aisles were quiet, I heard it again. Child's laughter skipping down the shelves like a taunt. I dropped everything and followed. This time I found him near the seasonal section. He was crouched low, hugging himself, shivering like the store's cold air was cutting through his skin. "It's okay," I said softly, trying to sound like I would with a scared patient. "I'm not going to hurt you. Can I help you find your mom?" His lips trembled. His eyes lifted to mine, wide and wet. "Mom," he whispered. The word made my heart twist. I took a step closer, but the moment I moved, he scrambled backward and darted into the next aisle. I chased him, my pulse roaring in my ears. I turned the corner fast, expecting to see him just a few feet ahead, but the aisle was empty. A cold chill swept through me, stronger than the store's air conditioning. My breath came quick and sharp. It wasn't just that he was gone. It was the way he disappeared, as if he'd melted into the shadows. That night when I went home, I couldn't stop hearing that one word. Mom. By the end of the week, my nerves were shot. I barely slept, and when I did, I dreamed of the boy's pale face and trembling voice. On Friday, the store was especially quiet, the kind of silence that feels thick, like it's pressing down on you. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. Laughter. This time it came from the back near the stockroom. I gripped my box cutter in one hand, flashlight in the other, and pushed through the swinging double doors. The stockroom smelled of cardboard and dust. Pallets were stacked high, shadows bending between them. And there he was, standing barefoot on the concrete, staring at me. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Tell me who you are. Why are you here?" His lips parted. For the first time, he spoke more than one word. "Find her." Then he bolted, weaving between the pallets. I ran after him, heart hammering, flashlight beam bouncing wildly. He disappeared around a corner. When I caught up, the space was empty, except for one thing lying on the ground. A photograph. I bent down, my hands trembling as I picked it up. The breath caught in my throat. It was me. A photo of me at 6 years old, barefoot, shivering. I sat on the stockroom floor, clutching the photograph like it might burn me. My own face stared back, the same age as the boy. Same messy dark hair, same trembling lips. I staggered to my feet and stumbled into the break room, photo still in hand. When I showed Martin, the guard, his face went pale. "Where'd you get this?" "The stockroom," I whispered. He shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. That's you. How could it be here?" I couldn't answer. The boy stopped appearing to anyone else after that night. No more whispers, no more sightings. But sometimes, when I'm shelving alone at 3 a.m, I feel it, the same presence, watching. Not threatening, just lost. And I know the truth even if I can't explain it. The boy wasn't a ghost haunting Walmart. He was a memory haunting me. Maybe some part of me. The child who lost her father in a sudden accident. The child who grew up too fast. The child who never stopped feeling abandoned. Maybe she had been waiting for me all along. The past doesn't disappear just because we grow up. Sometimes the things we bury, grief, fear, childhood pain, find ways to resurface. The boy in the aisles wasn't there to scare me. He was there to remind me that you can't outrun the parts of yourself you've left behind. Healing only begins when you face them. Working security in a 24-hour Walmart isn't glamorous. People think it's all about catching shoplifters stuffing DVDs into their jackets or chasing teenagers who grab cases of soda and bolt for the door. Truth is, most of my job as a loss prevention officer involved sitting in a chair for hours, staring at grainy black and white security feeds. My name's Marcus, 32, been with the company just under 5 years. I started out stocking shelves, but when the loss prevention spot opened, I jumped on it. More pay, steadier hours, less heavy lifting. I thought it would be easier. But easier doesn't always mean better. The overnight shift can play tricks on your mind. The store has this way of feeling alive after dark. The hum of the freezers, the buzz of the fluorescents, the squeak of a cartwheel echoing through empty aisles. It gets under your skin. And then there's the fact that almost nobody shops at 3 a.m. except the occasional trucker or insomniac. That's why I noticed him. Tall guy, long trench coat. Always appeared after 2 in the morning. He wasn't just wandering, he drifted. Electronics, then grocery, then frozen foods, and finally toys. He never bought anything, never went through checkout, never left the building, not on camera anyway. At first I thought I'd missed him slipping past the cameras. Blind spots exist no matter how well you set up the system. But after weeks of watching, the pattern became clear. He came in, walked, vanished. No exit, no trace. I started keeping a notebook, jotting down times and dates. By the 4th week, the sightings were exact. 3 nights apart, always in the same order. It was like he was on a loop. I mentioned it once to a coworker, Eddie, during a smoke break. He laughed. "Man, you've been staring at those screens too long. You're seeing things." But I wasn't. I knew what I saw. And it was real enough to make the hair stand up on my arms every time that trench coat slid across the screen. The weird part wasn't just that he vanished, it was how. 1 second he'd be standing in front of the freezer doors, his reflection faint on the glass. The next second the aisle would be empty, like he'd dissolved into the air. I tested the cameras, replayed angles, checked timestamps. It wasn't a glitch. Everything else on the feed ran smoothly. Employees stocking, janitors pushing floor polishers, the rare customer buying cough syrup at 3 a.m. The system didn't skip. Only he did. One night I stayed late after my shift, scrolling through hours of old footage. My eyes were burning when I saw him again. Electronics section. Staring at the rows of flat screens, his reflection showing up faintly on the demo TVs even though none were plugged in. I leaned in close, squinting at the monitor. His face was always obscured by the shadow of his coat collar. Not once in weeks did I get a clear look. That night, I made a decision. I was going to see him with my own eyes. When I told Eddie, he shook his head. "You're out of your mind. If it's some creep messing with us, call the cops. Don't go chasing him." But this wasn't about chasing a shoplifter anymore. This was about knowing the truth. So, the following Thursday, 3 nights since his last appearance, I took my radio and flashlight and walked the store floor at 2:30 a.m. The aisles were dead quiet, the overhead announcements muted for the night. My footsteps echoed. And then I saw him. Toy aisle. Standing perfectly still. His coat hung heavy, brushing against the cheap linoleum tiles. My mouth went dry. "Hey!" I called out, trying to sound authoritative, though my voice cracked. He turned his head slightly, then moved around the corner. I sprinted after him. The aisle was empty. My heart was still hammering when I ran back to the security office. I rewound the footage, hands shaking. There he was, tall man in the trench coat, standing in the toy aisle just like I saw. He turned the corner, but when I followed on camera, I wasn't there. The feed showed him moving, the toys lined up neatly, shadows stretching across the floor. But the spot where I should have been, running after him, was empty. I played it again and again. Same result. He was there. I wasn't. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if I was losing my mind. Maybe I'd fallen asleep on my feet. Maybe I hallucinated. But the sick twist in my gut told me otherwise. The next day I told Eddie. He gave me a look I'll never forget. Half pity, half fear. "Marcus, don't tell anyone else that. You'll get written up for messing around with footage. Management don't like ghost stories." But I knew what I saw, and what the cameras didn't see. That night I started carrying my phone with me, snapping quick photos of the monitors whenever he appeared. I needed proof. Only problem? Every photo came out blank. Empty aisles. By week 6, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of him. The trench coat, the silent drifting through aisles, the way he'd vanish like smoke. But in the dreams, it wasn't Walmart anymore. It was my own house, my hallway, my kitchen. He was there, standing still, watching. I started dreading shifts. My stomach twisted every time I sat down at the monitors, and yet, I couldn't stop watching. One night, just past 3 a.m., the cameras flickered. For a second, every screen went dark. When they came back, he was on all of them. Electronics, frozen foods, clothing, toys, every aisle at once. I staggered back, cold sweat running down my neck. Then slowly, each feed went back to normal. I left the office shaking, patrolling the store with my flashlight. I didn't see him, but I felt him. The air was heavy, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. When I returned, the monitors were blank again, except one, toy aisle. He stood there, but this time he wasn't drifting. He was facing the camera, his face obscured in shadow, but his head tilted slightly, as if he knew I was watching. 2 weeks later, I wasn't the same person. I was jumpy, hollow-eyed, barely sleeping. The night manager called me into her office and said I needed to take time off. "You're burning out," she told me. "Go rest." But I couldn't rest. Not until I knew. On my last shift before the forced break, I decided to confront him. Not with a radio, not with a camera, just face to face. At 3 a.m., I left the office and walked the aisles in silence. My boots echoed on the tiles, and then, in toys, there he was, waiting. I stepped closer, flashlight trembling in my hand. "Who are you?" I demanded. No answer. He turned the corner again. This time I followed without hesitation. The aisle was dark, too dark. My flashlight flickered, then died. The last thing I remember is the sound of footsteps, not mine, circling behind me. When I woke, it was morning. I was lying in the break room, coworkers shaking me awake. They said they found me passed out, flashlight on the ground. But when I checked the cameras later, the feeds told a different story. The trenchcoat man was there, gliding through the aisles. And me? Just like before. I wasn't on the footage at all. I used to feel safe in my routines. Every Thursday, like clockwork, I'd head to Greenridge Mall after work, wandering through the department stores while grabbing a latte from the corner cafe. It was my little escape from the cubicle life, a quiet hour of pretending I wasn't answering emails, fielding calls, and thinking about bills. I'm Rachel Miller. I'm 29, a graphic designer living in a small apartment on the west side of the city. I like quiet streets, coffee strong enough to burn my tongue, and a good book over a crowded bar any night of the week. After my last breakup, I thought I'd mastered the art of independence. I'd learned to enjoy my own company, trust my own judgment, and keep my life predictable. Predictable was safe. That Thursday started no differently than any other. I strolled past the window displays at Marshall's, admiring a muted gray tote that looked perfect for both work and weekend errands. The soft clink of hangers and the murmur of other shoppers was soothing, a soundtrack to my little escape. Then I noticed him. At first I thought it was nothing. A tall man in a dark jacket just browsing near the purses. Maybe he was shopping for someone, maybe he worked there. But when I glanced again at the mirrored display across the aisle, I caught his reflection, closer, then again, nearer than before. My pulse quickened. I shook my head. Maybe I was imagining things. I tried to focus on the bags, feeling my fingers graze the leather straps as I inhaled sharply. But every time I turned, his figure seemed to have shifted, always watching, always near. "Excuse me," I said quietly to a passing employee, trying not to make a scene. "Do you mind if someone's standing too close? I feel like—" I stopped, realizing how absurd it sounded. The employee shrugged, distracted by her phone. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I made a mental note to check my surroundings more closely, brushing off the unease as paranoia. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I forced myself to continue shopping, hurrying through the rows of handbags. But he mirrored me. He was always a few aisles behind, sometimes farther, sometimes just around the corner. I ducked into the self-checkout lane, hoping the crowd would obscure me. No such luck. The man appeared at the end of the line, casually scanning items in his cart, but his gaze was fixed. I could feel it pressing on me like a weight. I tried to act calm, pretending I was engrossed in my phone, typing a quick message to my friend about meeting later. Finally, I ran my card, grabbed my bags, and bolted toward the exit. My heart was hammering, adrenaline flooding my system, making my hands shake. And then I heard it. "Rachel." I froze mid-step, gripping the bag straps as if they could anchor me to safety. My head snapped toward the voice, and he was there, just steps away. He whispered it again. "I know you." Every instinct screamed to run, but terror froze me in place. My eyes darted to the parking lot. People milled around, loading groceries, chatting, oblivious. I fumbled with my phone and called my ex, Mike, the only person whose voice could calm me even in ridiculous situations. "Mike, I think someone's following me," I whispered. I don't know who he is, but he's outside, and he knows my name." There was a pause. Then Mike's familiar voice, laced with concern. "Stay where you are. Do not go outside. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Did you see his face?" "Yes," I gasped. "Tall, dark jacket, mid-30s. And he's looking at me. He knows me, Mike. I don't..." Before I could finish, he disappeared. Just like that. Mike arrived within 10 minutes, worried but calm. He walked the perimeter with me while I peeked through the lot's lights, scanning for anything suspicious. Empty. Not a soul in sight. It should have been a relief, but it wasn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through my social media accounts, checking privacy settings, wondering how he could have known what I looked like. My phone buzzed with notifications of new friend requests, likes from accounts I didn't recognize. And then it hit me. One of those accounts had photos I'd only posted on private settings, pictures he shouldn't have been able to see. I called the police, explaining everything, showing screenshots, timestamps, and messages. The officer listened, nodding politely, but the words that followed made my blood run cold. "Ma'am," he said, leaning back in his chair, "there's no proof he's done anything illegal. Stalking is tricky. You have to catch him in the act or threaten you directly. Until then, there's not much we can do." Not much we can do. Those words echoed as I lay awake that night, heart thundering in the dark. Over the next weeks, the fear followed me like a shadow. Every time I entered a store, I checked behind me. Every streetlight felt insufficient. My apartment felt smaller, more exposed. I discovered he'd been following me online for months, tracking my posts, learning my routines, memorizing where I went. It wasn't just a chance encounter, it was methodical, deliberate. One evening as I walked to my car, the hairs on my neck stood on end. The same sensation, eyes on me. I spun around and for a split second I swore I saw him, leaning against a lamppost across the street. He wasn't close enough to grab me, not yet, but the image alone made me freeze. I realized that fear was no longer just about being followed. It was about being powerless to stop it. I refused to live in constant terror. I changed routines, varied my routes, installed extra locks and cameras in my apartment. I reported every suspicious account online. I even took a self-defense class. But most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts. If a feeling told me something was wrong, I didn't argue with it. I acted. Months passed without a direct encounter, but the knowledge that he could still be out there gnawed at me. He hadn't been arrested, hadn't even been questioned about the photos and tracking. But I wasn't going to wait for him to make a move. I was going to live my life safely, cautiously, but without surrendering entirely to fear. The first time I walked through a store alone again, I did so deliberately. Eyes scanning, shoulders squared, keys ready in hand. And though a flicker of anxiety passed when someone lingered near me, I reminded myself, I had power. My awareness, my instincts, my precautions, those were my weapons. The shadow may still exist, but it no longer owns my life. Trust your instincts, take threats seriously, and never assume inaction is safety. Fear is natural, but inaction allows danger to persist. Protecting yourself means being aware, proactive, and vigilant, not paranoid. Awareness and preparedness are tools that give you control when others seek to steal it.